until the girl who said please be my friend forever is no longer my friend. Volume 3 by Iwatsuka Azuka. Translated by Sleepy Poppet. I can't read Japanese TL. Audiobook by Masquerade. Prologue. On the way back from school, Yuma felt quite awkward as he swayed on the crowded train. Usually, the train home was a bit less crowded, but today it was exceptionally crowded due to the impact of an accident on another line. To prevent Yui, who had a small frame, from getting crushed, Yuma had positioned himself against the wall, guarding her like a human shield, but it was incredibly awkward. Occasionally, Yui would glance up at Yuma as if trying to gauge his mood. However, whenever their eyes were about to meet, she quickly averted her gaze. Seeing this, Yuma let out a sigh inwardly. A few days ago, when Yui had stayed over at Yuma's house, Yuma had almost kissed her while she was drunk. He had apologized for it, but ever since then, their relationship had become tense. May had arrived, and even after the Golden Week holiday, the atmosphere between them hadn't changed. There was hardly any conversation between the two, and even when Yuma tried to start a conversation, Yui would either nod, shake her head, or barely manage a word or two in response. Yuma knew he was entirely at fault for almost kissing her even though they weren't officially dating. He tried to accept it, but honestly, it was painful. The uncomfortable silence continued, and then the train shook as it went around a curve. Whoa! Eek! Pushed by the passengers behind them, Yui and Yuma ended up pressed closely together. Sorry. Are you okay? Why yeah. Yui raised her face, but they were extremely close. If Yuma bent his waist just a little, their lips might touch. Blushing bright red, Yui shifted her body and used her bag as a guard to prevent any further closeness with Yuma. It was a normal reaction for a girl. Most girls would probably dislike getting physically close to a guy who isn't their boyfriend. However, it was quite surprising for him that she would respond this way, especially considering that just a little while ago, she had been clinging to him like a small animal. As they continued, the train arrived at the station. The two of them disembarked and followed the flow of people outside the station. When it started to drizzle, it's starting to rain. Do you have an umbrella? Yui nodded slightly and opened her bag. It seemed like she was searching for a foldable umbrella, but it didn't appear no matter how much time passed. Did you forget it? If you don't mind using mine, want me to lend it to you? I'll run home. No, that won't work. Yuma will get wet, so, then, do you want to share it with me? He mustered up the courage to suggest it. Hearing this, Yui's face immediately turned bright red. There was a moment of silence. Then, Yui nodded slightly. Her face was beet red, but there was no sign of her disliking it as she timidly stepped under the umbrella he had opened. It had been a few days since they had been this close, sharing an umbrella. Yuma felt his heart race as they walked together with slow steps. Yui was clearly nervous, and unlike before, their hands weren't entwined. However, she held onto Yuma's clothing just slightly, making sure not to let go. Even these small gestures made his heart flutter. She doesn't hate me, does she? If she genuinely disliked him, she would have undoubtedly refused to share the umbrella, even in the rain. Alongside the relief of not being disliked, another sense of guilt welled up. Perhaps Yui had trusted him as a close friend or an older brother figure. Finding out that someone she trusted in that way had impure feelings for her would be shocking, and she probably wouldn't know how to handle it. Thinking about it, he felt the urge to scratch his head in frustration. Even though he had made friends like Asuka and Nago, Yui had most likely relied on him the most. He had done something that betrayed her trust, and he was on the brink of doing something irreparable. Too ashamed to face her right now, there was nothing more he could do but distance himself at this point. He knew he was being selfish, fully aware that he had grown too fond of Yui. However, he longed to return to their original relationship. He continued to escort Yui all the way to her house. There was no conversation between them. To ensure Yui didn't get wet, they passed through the gate and went to a sheltered area. Thank you, Yui said softly and stepped out from under Yuma's umbrella, and then, he grabbed her arm. Yuma, I'm going to say something selfish now. Huh? Looking puzzled, Yuma bowed deeply to Yui once again. I want you to forgive me. I can't talk to you like we used to. It's been really tough. What? Why Yuma? It's entirely my fault. I know it might sound self-serving, but I want to go back to how things were. I'll do anything I can. So, please forgive me. Yui blinked in response to his words, as if she didn't quite understand what she was being apologized for. And then, after a few seconds, she suddenly opened her eyes wide and started to fumble with her words. Wait. Yuma, wait. It's not like that. I'm not angry or anything. It's not about forgiving or not forgiving. Exclamation mark. Yui? Sensing something strange, Yuma raised his head. Yui, upon realizing that her gaze might meet Yuma's, hastily averted her eyes, but gradually, her gaze returned to Yuma. It's really not like that. I wasn't angry or upset or anything. It's just, Yuma. Can I ask you one thing? Sure. Yui tightly gripped her own skirt. Why did Yuma seem like he was going to kiss me? Question mark. With that question, Yuma realized that he had fundamentally misunderstood something. Until now, he had been convinced that Yui had become distant from him because she was shocked that he, the Yuma she trusted, had tried to do such a thing. But that wasn't the case at all. Yui was simply embarrassed, and the way she asked why he seemed like he was going to kiss her seemed to convey, despite her trembling, that she was expecting something. As if she wanted an explanation. No. It's just, you said something like, it's okay to kiss, so, at this point, it might have been good to say, because I like you, but shame overwhelmed Yuma, and he ended up evading the situation. On the other hand, Yui, with a dumbfounded voice, blinked again. Then, her face quickly flushed with embarrassment. Did I really say something like that? No. At that time, you were clearly drunk and not in your right mind. But I'm a guy too. So when someone says something like that, it's easy to get the wrong idea. Anyway, it's entirely my fault. But seriously, you should be more cautious around guys too. You're way too defenseless, and I have various concerns because of that. They were both so embarrassed that they felt like they were about to die. Yui's ears were bright red, and she had teary eyes. Sorry, I sort of ended up reverse getting mad in the second half. No. It's okay. So, then, Yuma, when you seemed like you were going to, kiss, it was because I said something weird, right? It's like a guy thing? Yeah, well, kind of. I mean, it might have led to that. Sorry. That's really nothing to worry about. I think I messed up too. I mean, I've read about stuff like that on the internet, so guys are like that, I guess. No, this is entirely my fault. I'm really sorry. You don't have to apologize so much. I mean, it's like nothing happened. Besides, Yui fidgeted and looked up at Yuma with a shy expression. If it's you, Yuma, then I wouldn't mind. Exclamation mark. You really are like that, huh? Like what? That's what I'm saying. I keep telling you, you're way too defenseless. What if I couldn't control myself and just pounced on you? See, control? No, I mean, it's just a hypothetical situation. Please don't react to that part. I mean, just, you casually come to a guy's house alone, and we're alone in the room, and you're not even a bit cautious. Instead, you lie down on my bed and take a nap, and that's a bit much, even for you. It's okay, really. I wouldn't do that with anyone except you. That's exactly what I'm talking about. As they continued to make a fuss in front of the entrance, it happened. Cough. The door of the house opened, and Yui's father peered out. A bit later, her mother also appeared with an amused smile. Sorry, both of you. We didn't intend to eavesdrop. But when you have a conversation like that right in front of the door, it's hard not to overhear. Yui, we have something to discuss, so please come in, change, and wait. And Yuma-kun, I'll talk to you from my end, so would you mind going home for today? Yes, I'm sorry. Feeling a wave of embarrassment in his heart, Yuma reluctantly began his journey back home. However, he couldn't help but feel happy that he had been able to talk to Yui for the first time in a while. And if it's you, Yuma, then I wouldn't mind. The words Yui had said, her hesitant expression at that moment, wouldn't leave his mind. Could there be any guy in the world who could remain calm when a girl he liked said, I wouldn't mind a kiss? Did that mean it was just meant in an I like you as a friend way, or was there more to it? Archie, He sneezed. The rain had probably chilled him a bit. Sniffling his nose, Yuma made his way back home. Chapter 1 Cold and Nursing. The day after Yui and Yuma made up, Aku, Yuma, still in his pajamas, sat on the bed and made that sound as he looked at the thermometer. The thermometer displayed 38 degrees. Nen, who had been watching it, let out a small sigh. It's a cold. I'll send a message to let them know you won't be coming, so rest well. Yeah, cough. It's probably because you got wet in the rain yesterday. By the way, even though you had an umbrella, why did you get so wet? The wind was strong. When Yuma had put Yui under the umbrella yesterday, he had actually secretly tilted the umbrella towards Yui so that she wouldn't get wet from the rain. As a result, Yuma's shoulder had gotten wet. It was a gentlemanly gesture on Yuma's part, but it was embarrassing to have caught a cold because of it. Feeling his cheeks burning, he crawled under the covers. I'll make sure to let Yui-chan know too. Yuma felt Nen's presence leaving the room, so he poked his head out from under the blanket. He relaxed with a thought like, it's been a while since I caught a cold. His throat was sore, and his body felt heavy. It was as if his limbs were sinking into the bed. Moving around was a huge chore. But I need to let Yui know. Normally, Yui would wait for Yuma to pick her up at home. He couldn't just let her be late. So he sent her a message saying, I caught a cold, so I'm staying home from school. Almost immediately, he received a flood of replies from Yui, expressing concern and offering advice for when he felt unwell. He could sense her genuine worry from the messages, and Yuma softened his gaze when he read them. Though I think I should be the one worrying more. If Yuma wasn't there, naturally Yui would have to go to school by herself. While Yuma and Yui had become comfortable going anywhere together, going to school alone was a first for her. He imagined Yui, looking nervous, riding the train by herself. However, he didn't take it too seriously. He believed that Yui would be fine on her own now. They had spent enough time together for him to have that level of confidence. After exchanging a few messages in their chat, he placed his smartphone by his pillow. Without any particular activity in mind, he gazed absent-mindedly at the ceiling. Considering yesterday's events, it might not be such a bad thing that he didn't have to face Yui today, but at the same time, he couldn't help but feel disappointed. The thought of not being able to be with Yui made him feel lonely. I'm in pretty bad shape, huh? He couldn't help but chuckle to himself as he closed his eyes. He wanted to get better quickly and decided to rest quietly. When Yuma next woke up, it was already evening. He was surprised to see how much time had passed when he checked the time on his smartphone. Oh, wow. And, to his surprise, he had sweated quite a bit during his sleep. His underwear and even the pajamas on top of them were soaked, making him feel uncomfortable. I need to change, huh? On the small shelf next to his bed, there was a sports drink that he didn't remember seeing before. Has this always been here? He glanced at the clock again, but it was still too early for Nen to return. However, his head was feeling fuzzy from the fever, and he couldn't be bothered to think about it further. At any rate, he wanted to change. It wasn't just the discomfort of being sweaty. He was feeling a chill due to the dampness. He wouldn't get better like this. He tried to get out of bed to grab some fresh clothes from the dresser, but his legs wobbled lightly. It seemed he was in worse shape than he thought. His body felt heavy, and his head was clouded. Dragging his heavy body, he managed to get some clothes from the dresser and sat on the bed. He really wanted to wipe off the sweat, but it seemed too exhausting in his current condition. He started changing clothes slowly. Just as he had taken off his upper garment, the room's door creaked open. Yuma, you're awake, huh? Yui? It was Yui who had opened the door. Yui stood still at the entrance of the room for a moment, blinking her eyes as she looked at Yuma's bare upper body. What? SSS sorry. And in a hurry, she closed the door. I'm so sorry. I didn't think you were changing. ! It wasn't on purpose. Well, I don't think anyone thought it was on purpose, but cough cough. It's not like boys felt particularly bothered when someone saw their bare chest, but it seemed Yui wasn't feeling the same way. Yuma couldn't help but find it a bit amusing, imagining her blushing on the other side of the door. By the way, why are you at my place? Well, this morning, Nen-san came over before school and gave me a spare key to check on you. Ani-chan, doing things like that again. Cough cough. Yuma, are you okay? Your voice sounds rough. Yeah, I'm fine. Don't worry. Cough cough. Yuma, I'm coming in. The door opened once again. Yui was still embarrassed and couldn't meet his gaze directly. Nevertheless, she came straight to Yuma. Yui gently placed her hand on Yuma's forehead. You have quite a fever. You were trying to change because you sweated, right? It's better to wipe yourself off properly. I'll get a towel. No, you really don't have to worry. It's just a cold. Yuma, it's okay to rely on others when it's tough. Yui's voice was quiet, but there was an implied pressure that seemed to say she wouldn't accept any objections. I'll go get a towel. Yeah. Yui left the room in a hurry. Watching her retreating figure, Yuma squinted his eyes. He thought that Yui had really changed compared to before. She was still shy and reserved in some ways, but she had become more assertive about expressing her opinions and desires. He could also sense a newfound inner strength in her. Today, she had managed to go to school alone even without Yuma around, and when he compared her to when they first met, he felt that she had made significant progress. Thinking about how he had played a role in her growth made him feel somewhat proud. However, most of her opinions and desires revolved around things like, I want to play with Yuma, I want to make Yuma's lunch, or, I want to hold hands with Yuma. To be honest, it was a bit embarrassing. While he was lost in thought, Yui returned with a basin of warm water and a towel in her hands. Sorry to keep you waiting. Yeah, thanks. Cough. Yui placed the basin on the table and began wringing out the towel. Her lips pursed in concentration. Yui, can I wipe you off for you, huh? He wondered why she was suggesting this when she couldn't even look directly at him due to her shyness. No. It's okay. I might be sweaty and all. I don't mind that at all. So, Yuma, you don't mind if I do it, right? I don't mind. But, then, can you rely on me a bit more? You're not feeling well, so I want to help you. You want to wipe me. Cough cough. Look, I told you yesterday that you're too defenseless around guys. I think I can handle you in your current state. Yuma, it's not about that. Yuma, I understand. Yuma realized that it seemed futile to argue further. He shifted slightly to make room for Yui. Yui eagerly climbed onto the bed, facing Yuma's back. Then, I'll wipe your back? Yeah. Yui gently placed the towel against Yuma's back. Is it too cold? Nah, it actually feels nice. I see. That's good. Yui smiled with a relieved expression and continued to wipe Yuma. Moving from his neck to his back, she gently lifted his arm and carefully wiped his entire arm and sides, which were damp from sweat. Having his sweaty skin wiped with a warm towel turned out to be surprisingly pleasant. However, what was even more overwhelming was how his heart was pounding as she wiped him. Being touched all over by a girl he liked was many times more embarrassing than he had imagined. It wasn't just about embarrassment. There was also a sensation of his male instincts bubbling up as he was touched in various places. I'll take care of the front myself. As soon as she finished wiping his back, Yuma snatched the towel from Yui's hand. While he appreciated her care, having his chest or abdomen wiped in the same manner as before would be a bit too much for a pubescent boy to handle. On the other hand, it seemed Yui had reached her limit of embarrassment as well. She didn't complain when he took the towel and simply curled up on the bed, her face bright red and her knees drawn close to her chest. Yui, I also want to change my lower clothes, so could you please leave the room for a bit? Yeah, sorry, I didn't realize. Yui quickly got off the bed and practically fled the room. Watching her go, Yuma let out a relieved sigh. I've told her many times about this kind of thing. Even though he thought that in his mind, he found himself involuntarily smiling. The fact that Yui had come to see him, and that they could be together like this, made him happy, and he had somehow forgotten all about his illness. I really am in bad shape, huh? He chuckled as he thought about it. Yuma, are you hungry? I think it would be a good idea to have something in your stomach. If you want, I can make rice porridge or something. She asked him this after he had changed into his new pajamas. At first, he considered declining, but Yui's expression seemed to convey a message like, rely on me more. Let me do something for you. So, He decided to graciously accept her offer. Yes, please. You can use anything in the kitchen. Okay, got it. With that, Yui left the room. After a while, he started to hear the sounds of clinking dishes and pots coming from the kitchen as Yui prepared a meal. Listening to those sounds, he lay on his back on the bed and absent-mindedly gazed up at the ceiling. While cooking together had been fun, this wasn't so bad either. Yui, a girl he liked, was preparing a meal for him. Thinking about it made him feel strangely itchy inside. It's a little late to realize this, but I guess Yui is probably making my lunch like this too, she had said. I used to make my own lunch anyway, and it's not that different even if it's for 2 people. But still, she would include dishes he liked, pack them in a bento box for him, and when he ate it and said, "It's delicious," she would smile happily. He found himself thinking that he wished these days could continue forever. Yui preparing breakfast for him, eating together in the morning, and her sending him off to work with a cheerful "take care." What am I thinking? He felt like his fever had gone up a bit again. After a while, Yui returned, carrying a pot. "Yuma, sorry for the wait." "Yeah, thanks. But what's this? It looks kind of white." "Yeah, I found some milk in the fridge, so I made rice porridge with milk. My mom used to make it for me when I wasn't feeling well," Yui explained as she served the rice porridge into a bowl. Then, she scooped up a mouthful with a ladle, blowing on it repeatedly, and said, "Here." Say R. Caught up in the flow of R, Yuma was taken aback by how naturally it had happened. Yui seemed to notice her own actions a bit later, and she became flustered immediately. No, well, I used to be weak, and I used to get this kind of thing done for me a lot. So it just happened unconsciously, and, that's why." "Please." And she's continuing. Though he thought that, Yuma decided to accept it quietly. He took a bite of the rice porridge that Yui offered. "How is it?" "It's really delicious." I'm glad." Yui genuinely smiled with happiness at Yuma's words. He continued to eat, taking 2-3 more spoonfuls. The rice porridge Yui had made was truly delicious, and with every bite, he felt his strength returning to his body. Nevertheless, Yui continued to wear a smile filled with affection, making Yuma feel slightly uncomfortable. What's so funny? I just thought you looked cute." "Yuma, it's kind of complicated for a guy to be called cute by a girl." Sorry. "But, I was just wondering if this is what it feels like if I have a child in the future." "Well, you're the type who would probably dote on your own children." "Yeah, I think so too." I hope they take after you." Yuma almost spit out his food when he heard that. A bit belatedly, it seemed Yui realized the implications of her statement. She turned bright red and let out a panicked scream. No. I didn't mean it like that. I mean, exclamation mark. I know. I get it, so don't worry." From there, the conversation came to a halt, both of them blushing deeply. They ate their rice porridge in silence. Once their bowls were empty, Yuma announced, "I'm going to sleep," and turned away from Yui, lying down because it was just too unbearable. Even though he had said, "I get it," he couldn't figure out any other way to interpret Yui's earlier words. His heart was pounding. Maybe, just maybe, he couldn't think about it any further. Yuma decided to play possum and put an end to any forced contemplation. Yuma, did you fall asleep? After a while, Yui spoke softly. There was no response from Yuma. He was sound asleep, breathing peacefully. Quietly, she approached and peered at his sleeping face. Yuma's sleeping face had a certain charm to it, and Yui softened her gaze. But she had said something quite serious earlier. The words "I would probably dote on my own children" had inadvertently made her imagine herself doting on the child they would have together. Am I being too heavy-handed after all? She thought it was a bit much to be thinking about such things when they weren't even officially dating. Yui glanced around the room once again. Yuma's room. The room of the boy she liked. The last time she stayed over, it was neat and tidy, but today, due to her sudden visit, there were manga left out on the desk and the pajamas he had changed out of earlier were crumpled on the floor. It felt like someone was actually living here. She felt even more restless than the last time she had been here. The sense of being in Yuma's private space had grown stronger, and Yuma was weaker than usual now, relying on her in a way that was the opposite of their usual dynamic. It wasn't right to feel this way about a sick person, but her heart couldn't help but flutter. His sleeping face is so cute. Normally, she saw Yuma as a dependable older brother figure, but they were both 15. There was still a hint of innocence in his sleeping face, and as she watched, a maternal feeling stirred within her. She gently ran her fingers through his hair, being careful not to wake him. Usually, it was Yuma who would do this for her, but she found happiness in returning the favor. As she continued, she suddenly remembered the times when her mother had taken care of her when she was little. Back then, she often fell ill and her mother would nurse her back to health. Now, she was nursing the boy she liked. It felt strange when she thought about it. Speaking of which, when she was little, her mother used to kiss her on the cheek and say it was a magic spell to make her feel better. Her heart was pounding. She was about to do something incredible. She leaned in gently. "Yuma, you're asleep, right?" No response. As she watched Yuma sleeping soundly, she felt a rush of affection and excitement. Even though she knew she probably shouldn't be doing this, her emotions overflowed, and she couldn't control herself. "I'm gonna do a magic spell to make you feel better, okay?" As an excuse, she closed her eyes and leaned in. Chew. She lightly kissed his cheek. That was her limit. Blushing bright red, Yui hurriedly left the room. Meanwhile, Yuma, who was pretending to be asleep, buried his face in his pillow after Yui had left and squirmed around for a while. Chapter 2: Nursing and Pampering. The day after Yui's visit, Yuma's fever had almost completely subsided, and 2 days later, he completely recovered. Yuma was on his bed, taking his temperature, and he confirmed that it had returned to normal. Seemed like it got pretty serious, but maybe it's thanks to Yui taking care of me. Thinking about that, he inadvertently remembered the kiss on his cheek and felt so embarrassed that he could almost die. He gently touched his own cheek. He could still feel the sensation of the kiss lingering. Was that kiss really just as she had said, a magic spell? Or could it be? He couldn't help but entertain these thoughts. It would make him happy if it were true. But how should he face her from now on? And if he let his guard down, his mouth might unconsciously relax, making it difficult to keep a straight face. For the time being, he went to the living room, where Nen was already preparing breakfast. "Good morning, Yukon. Are you feeling okay?" "Yeah, I'm completely fine now." "Well, you seemed pretty lively yesterday already." He. "I wonder if it's thanks to Yui-chan coming to visit?" Exclamation mark. He could feel his cheeks getting warm. In reality, his health had improved dramatically since Yui's visit. They say that illness can be cured by the mind, and it really might be thanks to Yui. But when he thought about it that way, he couldn't help but remember the kiss, and he hastily put a stop to that train of thought. He sat down at the table and started on his breakfast of toast and milk. Nen, who was sitting across from him, seemed to be bothered by something and was staring at Yuma's face intently. "Hey, Yukon, did you kiss Yui-chan or something?" He almost spat out the milk he was drinking. Why would you bring up something like that? It seems like you haven't noticed it yourself. But Yukon, you have this habit of your eyes wandering when you're feeling shy or embarrassed. So when I mentioned Yui-chan, your eyes started wandering, and I wondered if something had progressed. Come on, did something happen? Share a bit of your youth with your Ani-chan, will you? There's nothing going on." "Ah." Your eyes wandered again. Yuma turned his face away from Nen with a huff. Nen, amused by his reaction, had a mischievous smile on her face. "Anyway, Ani-chan, you gave Yui a spare key, right? It's really not a good idea to have a spare key." "You're changing the subject so blatantly." "Well, it's not a big deal, is it? You can't imagine Yui-chan breaking into our house, can you?" "Well, that's true, but, besides, she might even become real family in the future, you know." That morning, Nen had her fun, teasing Yuma relentlessly. Despite all these antics, Yuma still went to pick up Yui at her house as usual. Before Yui's house, he took a deep breath. He somehow managed to put on a poker face and pressed the intercom button. However, unlike usual, Yui didn't immediately appear at the intercom today. It took her a while to respond, and instead of Yui, her mother's face appeared. Ah, good morning. Good morning. I'm sorry, Yuma-kun. That child seems to have caught a cold. Huh? Timing-wise, it was quite clear that he had passed on his cold to her. He realized he had made a mistake. He knew that Yui had a weak constitution, but he had completely overlooked the possibility when she had taken care of him. I'm sorry. It's probably from when she took care of me. Oh? Did something like that happen? You didn't hear it from Yui-san? No. She used to tell us everything before, but it seems like she's at that age now. Her mother said this with a somewhat delighted tone, then suddenly exclaimed, oh, could it be that girl has a spare key to your house, Yuma-kun? Huh? Oh, yeah. My sister gave it to her. I see. Well, the other day, when I opened the room, she was looking at the key with such a happy expression and surprisingly scolded me, saying knock before you come in. So that's it. It was the key to your house. Yuma felt his cheeks flush again. Her mother seemed to be looking at him with an amused expression. Just wait a moment, her mother said and disappeared back into the house, returning after a short while. Yuma-kun, hold out your hand. Huh? Why? Just do it. Yuma held out his hand, and she handed him a key with a ribbon attached. Huh? It's our spare key. After school, if you don't mind, could you check on her? I actually wanted to take the day off and take care of her, but she insisted that I should go to work and not worry about it. She's always been the kind of child who cares about those things. But I think she'd be really happy if you came. Well, it's just that having a spare key, is it a bother? I don't mind, but, well, I'm a guy, you know? I trust you in that regard. I really do. In the end, he reluctantly accepted the key, feeling somewhat pressured. He carefully placed the key in his wallet to make sure he wouldn't lose it. Come to think of it, Yui also has a spare key to my house, doesn't she? They both had spare keys to each other's homes, and it felt oddly ticklish. After that, he headed to school alone. Walking to the station, getting on the train, all by himself. It used to be nothing special, but now, he felt lonely without Yui by his side. We've been together almost every day since we first met, haven't we? Had he become so reliant on Yui that he couldn't stand being without her, even just for a short while? As he chuckled at the thought, his smartphone, which he had in his pocket, vibrated. Looking at it, it was a message from Yui. Good morning. I caught a cold, the message read, accompanied by a stamp of an anime character lying sick in bed. Sorry about that. It's probably because of me. Huh? Within seconds, a response came back. It's okay. The symptoms are mild, and I took the day off just to be cautious. Don't worry about it. More importantly, Yuma, are you feeling okay? Yeah, thanks to you. But don't push yourself too hard, okay? Your stamina might be down, and if gym class seems tough, you can just watch, alright? Why are you worrying about me when you're the one sick in bed? Laughs. Well, I'm used to being sick. Unpleasant kind of familiarity. Anyway, rest up today, okay? The train is about to arrive at the station, so I'll cut this short for now, alright? Yeah, I'll message you again when I have some free time. So make sure to rest. With those words, he sent an anime character stamp that read, sleep peacefully. Despite the short exchange, lasting only a few minutes, he felt his cheeks loosen. The faint sense of loneliness he had been feeling seemed to have disappeared, replaced by a light-hearted feeling. Am I really becoming that dependent on Yui? He couldn't help but smile wryly as he entertained the thought. Good morning, Suizaki-kun. I heard Yui caught a cold this time. As he entered the classroom, Asuka, who had been talking to Nago earlier, said this. Yeah, did you hear that from Yui? Yep. She messaged me a while ago saying she caught a cold, so she's taking a break. Asuka then turned his smartphone towards him. They had exchanged messages with stamps like got a cold and take care, and the chat screen was filled with rows of bear stamps. Normally, when Yui and Yuma chatted, they often used stamps featuring characters from anime or manga. However, it seemed that she didn't use them much when chatting with Asuka, perhaps out of consideration since she wasn't as familiar with her. It felt a bit refreshing. Speaking of which, what kind of conversations do you and Yui have in your chats? Huh, why would a guy ask that? It's not like I'm asking with any deep meaning. When Yui chats with me, We mostly talk about anime or games, but I was just curious about what kind of conversations girls have with each other. You don't have to tell me if you don't want to. Well, I don't think it's something I can tell Suizaki-kun though. When you put it that way, it actually makes me more curious. Oh, really? What if it's a maiden's secret? If we talked about certain things, Yui-chan would get mad. Asuka said this with a grin. He had read somewhere in a manga that girl talk goes way beyond what guys imagine. Could it be that Yui was also having those kinds of conversations? It was hard to picture. Well, about half of what we talk about is lovey-dovey stuff about us. Asuka said this and hugged Nigo's arm. Asuka, we're supposed to keep our distance at school. Eh? What's the harm in a little bit? Asuka said so and didn't let go of Nigo's arm. Nigo sighed, saying, oh, well. However, his eyes were gentle, and even to an outsider, it was clear that he cherished Asuka. These lovey-dovey idiots. You're in no position to say that, Nigo promptly responded to Yuma's comment. We understand that we might be seen that way reluctantly, but at least it's not as extreme as you two. Yeah, among the girls, you guys are known as a married couple. Wait just a slight minute. Is it really like that? He and Yui were always together at school, and sometimes he even gets made a homemade bento for lunch. While he knew that they were being seen together a lot, and some people might think they were a couple, he never expected them to call him and Yui a married couple. Say, you should really stop saying things like that, okay? I mean, I don't know how Yui feels about all this, I know, but, Yui-chan is the reason why people started calling you that, huh? Well, we have physical education, and sometimes we split up into groups of girls and boys. During those times, we gather with other kids and chat, but when Yui-chan talks about you, she has this incredibly happy expression on her face. It's like she's a newlywed talking about her husband. Yuma felt his cheeks rapidly growing warm. Hearing that the girl he liked talked like that with other girls was rather embarrassing. Or rather, you know what? I'm just going to say it straight. Suizaki-kun, you like Yui-chan, right? No comment. Well, not outright denying it in a situation like this is basically admitting it, isn't it? Yuma frowned in discomfort. Seeking help, he looked at Nigo, who returned an ambiguous expression and took a paperback novel out of his bag, handing it to Yuma. The book he received was a light novel titled The Saintess Next Door. It was famous for its sweet, frustrating love story between two characters who clearly has mutual feelings but had yet to officially start dating. It was the kind of story that made you want to shout, just get together already. When you read it. That's what I mean. What do you mean? Well, Yuma had a vague idea of what Nigo was trying to say. Essentially, it meant that he and Yui were in a situation where even Nigo was tempted to say, just start dating already. And just then, the school bell rang, providing Yuma with an excuse to escape and hurry back to his seat section. He had almost done something that would have betrayed Yui's trust. When he was drunk, he had come dangerously close to kissing Yui, who was clearly not in her right mind. It was only natural that he had distanced himself from her, and yet, Yui had come to his house to visit and take care of him, despite being sick, and even kissed his cheek while he pretended to sleep. Yuma knew he was liked as a friend and an older brother figure, but would that alone explain why Yui would kiss his cheek? Without seeking an answer to that question, Yuma decided to visit Yui's house after school. He pressed the intercom button, but there was no response. His feelings were torn between wanting to go home and wanting to see Yui. After taking a deep breath, he opened the gate and approached the front door. Although he hadn't done anything wrong, he couldn't help but glance around to ensure no one was watching. He inserted the spare key given by Yui's mother into the lock and turned it silently to avoid making any noise. Even though he had repeated this action countless times at his own home, he felt an overwhelming sense of nervousness. With his hand on the door handle, he gently pushed it open and peeked inside, only allowing his head to enter the room to get a sense of what was happening inside. Inside the house, there was an eerie silence, with not a single sound. However, Yui's usual shoes were neatly arranged at the entrance. "Pardon the intrusion." Yuma announced his presence but received no response. "Is she asleep?" He wondered as he quietly ascended the stairs, trying not to make a sound. Sure enough, it was completely silent. Even his own footsteps seemed too loud to him as he stealthily made his way to the second floor, where Yui's room was located. Arriving in front of Yui's room, he lightly knocked on the door. Again, there was no response. With determination, Yuma carefully opened the door and peeked inside. He saw Yui lying on her bed. Slipping into the room through the gap in the door, he approached quietly. Yui was indeed asleep. However, her face was flushed, and her forehead was glistening with sweat, suggesting she had a fever. He gently touched her cheek with his hand. It was hot. She seemed to have a significant fever. At that moment, Yui's eyes fluttered open. "Oh, sorry. Did I wake you?" Yui didn't respond. It wasn't clear if she was feeling drowsy due to the fever or if she was still half asleep, but she gazed at Yuma with unfocused eyes. Then, Yui gently placed her hand on the hand that had been touching her cheek. She gradually relaxed her expression and affectionately rubbed her cheek against Yuma's hand. The sensation of her soft, smooth skin and the slightly elevated body temperature left Yuma feeling awfully uneasy. Despite that, he allowed himself to be guided by Yui's actions. After a while, Yui's focus gradually returned. Why Yuma? Yeah. I am so sorry. I thought it was a dream. If it were a dream, would she do something like that? Yuma entertained the thought but decided not to vocalize it. Wait. Why are you here, Yuma? I came to visit you. Your mom gave me a spare key and asked me to check on you. I see. It's not a return favor from the other day, but is there anything you'd like me to do for you? Anything at all? Thanks. Just, could you move away a little, huh? Why? I'm sweating. I smell of sweat. It's embarrassing. It's not a big deal, really. Besides, when I was sick, I probably sweated a lot too. Boys and girls are different. Is that so? If anything, I'd say you smell good. Never mind. Yuma accidentally let out an awkward remark and quickly fell silent. Embarrassed, Yui hid under her blanket. Oh, I'm sorry about that. It's okay, Yui responded, cautiously poking her head out again. I'll change into something else, so, can you please step out of the room for a bit? Are you sure you don't need a towel to wipe off the sweat? If you want, I can bring one. Yui suddenly froze, leaving Yuma puzzled thinking what's wrong. After a moment, Yuma realized what she might be thinking. This situation was the same as when he had caught a cold. Back then, Yuma was the one who caught a cold, and Yui had wiped his body. And now, it's the reverse. Yui has a cold. Anyway, I'll prepare a towel. Yui quickly exited the room and closed the door. His heart was pounding. No, surely Yui wouldn't ask Yuma, a guy, to wipe her body. But Yui had shown remarkable initiative on occasion, and if by some chance things took that turn, he really doubted his ability to keep his composure. In any case, he prepared hot water and a towel and waited outside the room while Yui wiped her body and changed her clothes. Yuma, you can come in now. After a while, he heard her voice from inside the room. When he opened the door, Yui, now in her pajamas, was sitting on the bed. Don't push yourself. Lie down. You don't have to worry about me. Yeah. After being told by Yuma, Yui gently lies down on the bed. Then, Yuma covered her with a blanket. All right, but seriously, is there anything you want? Since it's my fault, you can be a little demanding. You don't have to worry so much. Times when you're feeling weak are when you can rely on others. You said that to me the other day, didn't you? Well, I do feel like I'm always relying on you. That's okay. So, is there anything you want me to do? Yes. I used up the cooling sheet. Could you replace it with a new one? Got it. He picked up the cooling sheet from the desk next to the bed, carefully peeling off the transparent film. He lifted Yui's bangs and applied it gently to her forehead. Thank you. Is there anything else you need? Well, just having you here to talk to makes me happy. Oh, but what is it? Don't hesitate to ask. Is it okay if I make a selfish request? Yeah. Then, if you could hold my hand, I might be happy. Is it because she feels vulnerable when her health isn't at its best? There was a hint of embarrassment, but they were relatively accustomed to holding hands. Yui cautiously extended her hand from under the blanket, and Yuma gently took her hand as if to comfort her. Her small hand felt warmer than usual. The two of them held hands, conveying their feelings through the touch. He. Yuma's hand is cold and feels nice. Anything else? Head. I also want you to pat my head. Sure thing. While holding her hand with one hand, he used the other to gently pat her head. Perhaps due to her weakened state from the cold, her way of seeking comfort was more direct than usual. Hey Yuma. Yeah? What's up? Why are you so kind to me, Yuma? Well, you're my precious best friend and like a little sister to me. As Yuma replied, Yui made a somewhat melancholic expression. Is that all? Huh. He felt his heart race. A best friend and like a little sister. But it seemed Yui was looking for an answer beyond that, one that wasn't just about friendship or family. His heart was pounding, and his cheeks were hot. Yui's face had also turned redder than before. Without words, they continued to hold each other's hands, their fingers entwined, conveying their feelings. Yuma. Can I ask for something more selfish? Huh? Sure. Of course. I want to sleep with you. Yui, you're just so defenseless, even though I told you. Is that a no? All right, just this once. With that response, he took off his jacket. When he got into bed, Yui had left enough space for him. As they lay down, Yui buried her face into Yuma's chest. With a hint of hesitation, he gently held her closer. Oh no. This is dangerous. Yui's body was small, soft, and warm. She fit perfectly in his arms, and holding her felt incredibly comforting. As he gently stroked her head, Yui nuzzled against his chest affectionately. An indescribable sense of happiness filled his heart. There had been a time when he had stayed overnight at Yui's house, and they had slept like this. However, back then, it was to comfort Yui, who was scared of thunderstorms. Now, it felt as though their bodies were melting into one another, and he wished they could stay like this forever. While he did have some male desires, the happiness of this moment and the strange sense of both excitement and security overpowered them, making him never want to let go. Is this okay? You're being quite clingy today. You said I could be a little selfish today. Well, just for today, then. Saying that, Yui continued to bury her face in Yuma's chest, savoring his embrace. Did Yui also feel happy being held like this? Did she share the same emotions as he did? Thinking about it made him love her even more, to the point where it was overwhelming. Overwhelmed by his feelings, he had been trying not to touch Yui's body too much. However, he couldn't help but tighten his embrace for a moment. Oh, sorry. Did that hurt? Hastily, he loosened his grip. However, Yui tugged at his clothes and looked up at him with a flushed expression, as if caught up in the heat of the moment. No, I want more. With Yui's words, Yuma couldn't resist any longer and hugged her tightly. After a while, Yui began to breathe softly, her chest rising and falling with each gentle breath. Yeah, I really do love her. Feeling her relax and trust him like this filled his heart with happiness. However, he found himself in a somewhat awkward position. Yuma's arm was acting as a pillow for Yui, and she had her legs entwined with his. He had initially planned to leave once she fell asleep, but trying to move would undoubtedly wake her up. He didn't want to disturb her peaceful slumber. Her scent, a sweet, flowery scent, filled the air. Is it because her animal-like charm is even more pronounced than usual? Despite the awkward posture, Yuma strangely felt at ease. Yui's body was soft and warm, akin to cuddling with a top-tier body pillow. Being like this made all his physical tiredness and stress melt away. As time passed, his eyelids grew heavy, and eventually, Yuma succumbed to sleep as well. He was awakened by the familiar sound of a smartphone's notification. Yuma-kun, did I wake you up? Sorry, you both looked so cute sleeping like that, so I couldn't resist. When he looked up, Yui's mother was holding her smartphone. It seemed she had been taking pictures. He noticed his current situation a little late. Still entangled with Yui, they had slept together, and now Yui's mother had witnessed it and even taken a picture. Please delete it. It's okay. I won't show it to anyone else. I just want to look at it from time to time to feel soothed. But I was quite surprised when I peeked into Yui's room. You two were sleeping together, so it seemed like you'd taken a step into adulthood. The step into adulthood. Well, Yui let out a small groan. It seemed she had been awakened. However, due to her low blood pressure, Yui was not a morning person. She was still half asleep. And then, still half asleep, Yui buried her face into Yuma's chest, rubbing her head against him lovingly. She looked just like a kitten and was incredibly cute. But the situation was now quite awkward. Why, Yui? Wake up. Hey, yawn. Your mom is here. She's right in front of us. Huh? Yui made a foolish sounding noise and looked up. She glanced at her smiling mother, then at Yuma, then back at her mother, and suddenly started flustering. Mum? Huh? Is it already evening? Hee. You two were sleeping so soundly. I understand, I really do. Back in the day, your father and I. No, it's not like that. Well, I need to take a shower because I sweated. It's not recommended to take a shower when you have a cold, you know. I'm already better. With that, Yui quickly prepared her change of clothes and hurriedly left the room. That child gets so embarrassed. Well, I guess it is embarrassing to be all sweaty in front of a boy. Her mother's words made Yuma realize the situation too. The blouse she was wearing was soaking wet. At first, he thought it was his own night sweats, but it turned out to be Yui's. When you're in the final stages of a cold, it's possible to sweat profusely, so that must be the case here. Thinking it was Yui's sweat made him feel even more embarrassed. How about it, Yuma-kun? Would you like to take a shower with Yui? No, really. I'm fine. I mean, it's not like that. But Yuma-kun, you like Yui, right? You passionately asked for my daughter's hand in marriage on the day of the entrance ceremony, didn't you? Watching Yuma blush and get flustered, Yui's mother chuckled. Yeah, she's definitely the same type as my sister. Yuma thought to himself in a corner of his mind. It's a good time. So why don't you join us for dinner? I'd like to chat with you, Yuma-kun, and I'm sure my daughter would be delighted. But, besides, we need to hear in detail about the circumstances that led to you sleeping with our beloved daughter. Especially my husband, he had quite the expression when he saw you two sleeping together. In the end, Yuma reluctantly agrees to have dinner together with them. When they went to the living room, Yui's father was sitting at the table with his arms crossed. Yuma genuinely wanted to leave. Good evening, Yuma-kun. Hello. Now, you, don't give off such an intimidating vibe just because you're afraid of losing your only daughter. Yuma fell silent, sensing the balance of power in this household, particularly from Yui's father's reaction. Under her mother's encouragement, Yuma took a seat in front of Yui's father. Let me start by expressing my gratitude, Yuma-kun. Thank you for taking care of our daughter all this time. No. It's not much, really. I haven't done anything special. I'm just thankful for the good relationship we have. Don't be so modest. Yui seems to be enjoying school every day thanks to you. We sincerely appreciate that. However, about this, the boundary between boys and girls, or should I say, it seems a little too close, doesn't it? Well, yes. I'm really sorry about that. Since there was no denying the issue of boundaries, Yuma decided to apologize. Yui's mother chuckled at their conversation. Dear. Fathers who meddle in their daughter's love life aren't usually well liked, you know? Well, and besides, it's not like we have the right to say that, right? When we were students. Cough. Yui's father attempted to divert the conversation with a dramatic cough. As Yui had mentioned before, the two of them had married during high school. Yui's mother had turned 16 and immediately filed their marriage paperwork. It was difficult to imagine getting married during high school, but watching the harmonious relationship between the two of them, Yuma couldn't help but feel a bit of admiration. In the corner of his mind, he couldn't help but think about what it would be like to have Yui with him, cooking together, playing games side by side, and even cuddling and sleeping together like they had earlier. But he quickly cut off that train of thought, realizing it was not the right time. On the other hand, Yui's father seemed to regain his composure after his wife's words. He released a breath he had been holding in his lungs. As I mentioned earlier, we're sincerely grateful to you. While we hope you'll maintain some basic decorum, we don't intend to be overly meddlesome. So, there's just one thing I'd like to ask you. Yui's father said this, looking directly into Yuma's eyes. Yuma, will you take good care of Yui? Yes, I will. I'll take good care of her. Surprisingly, those words flowed out of Yuma naturally. He wanted to cherish Yui. He wanted to make her happy. That feeling was unwavering and would continue into the future. With this response, Yuma felt that Yui's father, who had seemed stern until now, slightly relaxed his expression. However, at that moment, there was a noise from the hallway outside the living room. Yuma tensed and looked in that direction. Just then, Yui's mother appeared from the living room and checked the hallway. "It's okay. There's no one there," Yui's mother said with a smile. He felt relieved. Naturally, he wouldn't want Yui to hear what he just said. Yuma let out a sigh of relief. Meanwhile, Yui, with her face flushed red and her legs feeling weak, had sat down in the hallway. "Yuma, will you take good care of Yui?" "Yes, I will. I'll take good care of her." She felt embarrassed. Having sneakily returned to the scene, she had probably overheard a conversation she shouldn't have. Fortunately, her mother had acted quickly, assuring them that there was no one there, but this situation was still quite embarrassing. Still looking at her, her mother made a hand signal indicating that Yui should go back to her room. Yui replied with an okay sign. She stealthily returned to the room, closed the door behind her, and sat down with her back against it. Her heart was pounding. Both Yuma and her father had sounded incredibly serious. Her father's voice wasn't just a casual "take care of Yui at school." It felt more like, "Will you cherish Yui for the rest of your life?" And Yuma's response had been equally earnest. "Yes, I will." Her heart raced so much that she felt dizzy. Yuma had said he would cherish her. Well, he had always been extremely caring towards her, but this felt different. Perhaps it was more like, "Please entrust your daughter to me." While she was lost in her thoughts, there was a knock at the door, causing her to jump. "Yui, can I come in?" Following her mother's voice, Yui felt relieved and said, "Why yeah, come in." As her mother entered the room, she noticed Yui's flushed face and chuckled. "Are you okay? Your face is so red." "That's because, it seems like you heard everything clearly, huh?" Yui nodded quietly. Her mother's warm smile made her feel incredibly embarrassed. Mum?" "Yes, dear." About earlier, was that, about that kind of thing?" "What do you mean by that kind of thing?" "Well, I mean, does Yuma, like me?" "Yes, he does." Mutual feelings? It seems that way, doesn't it?" Hearing it from a third party only made Yui feel more embarrassed. She covered her face with her hand, feeling like her cheeks were burning up. What should I do? Mum, I'm so embarrassed, I can't even face Yuma." To this adorable question, her mother squinted her eyes in a playful manner. "Right. Well then, swallow your embarrassment and take one more step, huh? Since we both know you like each other, try indulging in what you want. Eventually, you won't even be bothered by embarrassment anymore." But that's... "Well, I understand the feeling of embarrassment, so I won't force you, but Yuma-kun will definitely be happy, you know." "Is that so?" "Of course." "Yui, wouldn't you be happy if Yuma started showing his affection?" "Yeah, both giving and receiving affection makes people happy, you know." "Now then, Mom is about to go, but what will you do?" "I'll take a little more time to calm down." "Understood. I'm cheering for you." After her mother left, Yui staggered over to her bed and collapsed onto it. She buried her face in the pillow and hugged it tightly. Her face was still warm, her heart was pounding. She felt embarrassed, happy, and so overwhelmed with emotions that she felt like she might lose control. "This pillow, it smells nice." She sniffed the scent. Soon, she realized that it was the smell of Yuma, who had been sleeping in this bed until recently. "I like this smell." Come to think of it, she vaguely remembered reading somewhere on the internet that people tend to find the scent of the opposite sex they're genetically compatible with to be pleasant. Yuma also said that I smell nice. Even such trivial thoughts made her happy, and she felt even more joy at the realization that they were both in love. Her face continued to relax. She buried her face in the pillow, savoring the scent. In doing so, she felt safe, excited, and happy, as if she were being embraced by Yuma. "What am I doing?" From there, Yui spent some time lost in ecstasy on her bed. While Yuma was helping with dinner preparations, Yui timidly entered the living room. "Oh, you're here. You took quite a long bath. Are you okay? Your face is all red. Did your fever come back?" As Yuma said this and touched Yui's forehead, she exclaimed, "Eek," and hurriedly moved away. "Yui, I am fine. I just got a little flushed, that's all." As she said this, Yui averted her eyes from Yuma. "Yuma, it's nothing." Yuma tilted his head in response to Yui, who seemed like she wanted to say something but couldn't find the words. Was it because they were caught sleeping together by their parents? Certainly, being seen like that by family members was a unique experience. If he were seen in such a situation by his older sister, he might react similarly to Yui. As he chuckled at the thought, Yui tugged lightly at Yuma's clothing. "Yui?" Yui looked up at him with upturned eyes. For some reason, her expression felt much more seductive than usual, causing him to inadvertently avert his gaze. What's wrong?" "It's nothing." Yui said that and let go of Yuma's clothing. For some reason, their mother watched them with a wry smile. Without saying anything more, the four of them had dinner together. Yui was restless throughout the meal, and to be honest, Yuma was quite uneasy as well. However, nothing happened, and they finished dinner without incident. When Yuma was about to leave, Yui walked him to the front door. "Are you sure you're okay to see me off? It wouldn't be funny if you caught a cold again." "I am fine. I really have recovered." In fact, she looked much better. Her complexion was good, and she would probably be able to go to school tomorrow. "Is something bothering you, huh?" Why do you ask?" "Well, you've been fidgeting for a while now." "Yeah, there was something, but it was something I'm really happy about." I see. "I don't know what it is, but I'm glad for you." Yuma cut the conversation short there. He couldn't bear to look at Yui's incredibly embarrassed yet happy face, which made him feel strangely self-conscious. He opened the front door and stepped outside. The sun had already set, and the evening breeze felt refreshing. Yui put on her sandals and followed Yuma outside. "Thanks for today. It was originally something I passed on to you, so don't mention it. Are you sure you'll be okay for school tomorrow?" "Yeah, I think so." "All right. I'll come pick you up tomorrow morning then." "Yeah, I'll be waiting. Take care then." As he was about to return home, Yuma felt a tug on his sleeve. "Yui?" Turning his head, he found Yui tugging on his sleeve. She had a somewhat I-did-it-without-thinking look, and seemed a bit flustered. "Is something wrong?" Well." Yui fidgeted and looked up at Yuma with upturned eyes. "Could you, pat my head one more time?" Yuma hesitated for a moment as if he wanted to say something, but eventually, he silently complied with Yui's request. He gently touched Yui's hair with his fingertips and then used his whole hand to softly stroke her head. Yui closed her eyes with a contented expression, surrendering herself to Yuma's actions. He felt his heart race at her request. When she used such an endearing voice, it was a little hard for him as a guy to resist. Yuma let his hand drift lower, gently caressing Yui's cheek. She opened her eyes slightly, smiling as if she were being tickled. She didn't show any signs of reluctance, instead closing her eyes again and nuzzling her cheek against his hand. It was challenging to restrain the urge to embrace her fully. After a while, he reluctantly withdrew his hand. "Are you satisfied now?" "Yeah, thanks," Yui replied with a blissful expression. The fact that she looked so happy just from his touch overwhelmed him. "Well, I'll see you again tomorrow." "Okay, bye." They waved to each other and parted ways. Yuma quickly walked back to his own house. As soon as he arrived home, Yuma retreated back to his room. She really is too laid back. Yui seemed incredibly defenseless, and he couldn't help but worry that she might be too accommodating. However, he believed that Yui was acting this way precisely because he was the one she was interacting with. She didn't show any reluctance when he touched her. In fact, she seemed happy about it, and the way she had sweetly asked for more when they parted ways. Naturally, with things having progressed this far, he couldn't help but have various expectations. Perhaps if he had confessed earlier, Yui would have accepted him. However, he believed that Yui's accommodating nature and the desire to avoid any awkwardness might have held her back. Yui had such a personality, and Yuma understood that. That's why he had decided not to confess until Yui genuinely liked him. But now, Perhaps Yui would accept his feelings wholeheartedly. Maybe she would respond with the same emotions he held. Suppressing the urge to jump with joy, he placed a hand on his chest and took a deep breath. Now, he might be able to date Yui in the way he had always wished for. They might become a couple. But, he realized that confessing again would be a daunting task. Just saying "I love you," a simple phrase, required a considerable amount of courage. Yet, their current relationship was so comfortable that he wondered, isn't it okay to stay like this? After saying those things to Yui's father, "I don't feel very cool," Yuma thought to himself and gave a wry smile. On the other hand, Yui buried her face in her pillow, her cheeks still flushed. Thinking back on today's events made her feel incredibly embarrassed, but also incredibly happy. She wanted him to touch her more, and she found herself wanting to be more affectionate. Recalling those moments made her heart race, and she could still faintly sense Yuma's warmth and scent on the bed, making it hard for her to fall asleep. So instead, she thought about those words. "Yuma, will you take good care of Yui?" "Yes, I will. I'll take good care of her." Yui buried her face in the pillow and wriggled around. She even pinched her cheek, which hurt quite a bit, but she couldn't be happier. "What should I do? I already loved Yuma so much, thinking there couldn't be anything more. But now that I know we share the same feelings." Her feelings of loving Yuma overflowed even more. Before, she just loved being with Yuma because she loved him so much. She wanted to be together forever and be his girlfriend. That's what she thought. However, now that they both felt the same way, it wasn't enough. She wanted to be even more affectionate. She wanted to touch and be touched. She wanted to hug tightly and go on dates. She wanted to spend more time together, cuddling and flirting. And she even wanted to try kissing. She wanted more of Yuma. Much, much more. These feelings kept overflowing, and Yui couldn't stop them. Yui picked up her smartphone. "I love you. Please go out with me." She typed these words and hesitated for a moment before pressing the delete button. She repeated the process several times. She had the urge to just send it, but she didn't have the courage for that, and confessing through a chat didn't seem quite right either. However, even just putting these feelings into words made her heart race. She thought, if I send this, I'll become Yuma's girlfriend, and it made her feel even more excited. After trying several times, she regained some composure and chuckled. Instead of the confession, she typed "good night" and sent it. Soon after, Yuma replied with "good night." Even something as simple as this made her happy, and Yui couldn't help but bury herself under the blankets. Chapter 3: Sweetness and Studying for Tests. The next morning, Yuma as usual, went to pick Yui up at her house. Yui was waiting in front of her house today, and when she spotted Yuma, she greeted him with a smile that seemed to be a mix of joy and shyness, waving her hand slightly. "Good morning." "Good morning. Is your body feeling better now?" "Yeah, I'm fine now." They exchanged greetings somewhat awkwardly. However, for some reason, Yui's expression appeared happier than usual, and her smile seemed sweeter, as if it were filled with honey. "Tea then, shall we go?" "Yes, let's go." And so, they started walking side by side. Yuma walked a bit slowly, taking Yui's health into consideration, but Yui's steps were light, and she seemed completely fine. "Should we hold hands?" When Yuma spoke those words, Yui nodded eagerly as if she had been waiting for them. Then, hands? He took her outstretched small hand and gently intertwined their fingers. They lightly moved their fingers as if seeking each other, feeling each other's touch and warmth. They had held hands many times before, but it had always been in the context of close friends. However, today, it felt different. It was frustrating that he couldn't find the right words to describe it, but it felt like the original close distance between them had somehow shrunk by half. On the other hand, Yui seemed as though she was trying to sense humor through their hand-holding. Her occasional fleeting glances were soft, and at times, she pressed her body against his, much like a small animal seeking affection. His heart was pounding. Yui today seemed somehow flighty or sweeter than usual. With each of Yui's gestures, it became clear that she loved him, and that made him feel embarrassed and happy. If he could, he wanted to hold Yui close and embrace her forever. They continued walking until they reached the vicinity of the train station. "We're getting close to the station," Should I let go now? Saying that, he loosened his grip. During the entrance ceremony, he had held Yui's hand to keep her from feeling anxious. But once they had settled into school life, he had refrained from holding hands at the station or school. However, Yui didn't seem willing to let go today. Yui, isn't it okay to stay like this? Well, you see, if our classmates see us like this, they might think we're in that kind of relationship, you know? He felt like a coward for bringing up such a topic, but he couldn't help himself. I'm fine with it, and then, Yui replied, giving him the answer he had hoped for. Yuma, are you not okay with it? If anything, I was happy. He almost blurted out, but he swallowed it back down. It was just too embarrassing to say out loud. Yui smiled shyly and squeezed his hand even tighter. Then let's stay like this, okay? Yeah. They arrived at the station, still holding hands, and boarded the train. The train was as crowded as usual, and, as was their routine, Yui headed towards the wall while Yuma became the protective wall, shielding her from the surrounding passengers. However, different from usual, Yui was snuggled up closely to Yuma, occasionally pressing her body against him as if seeking affection. Why, Yui? Is it just me, or are you a bit closer today? Is it not okay? Well, it's not really a problem. Yui flashed a sweet smile, gently resting her forehead against Yuma's chest. He could feel the warmth and sweet scent coming from her as she pressed close. His heartbeat intensified rapidly. What is this adorable creature? He felt his heart tightening. He was glad they were on the train. If not for that, he probably wouldn't have been able to resist hugging Yui. Soon, they arrived at the nearest station to their school and walked hand in hand towards the school, passing several classmates along the way. Yui's white hair already made her stand out, and being seen holding hands with a boy like this would naturally lead people to assume they were in that kind of relationship. However, even when Yuma subtly suggested letting go, Yui held onto his hand, as if saying, I don't want to let go. It was clear she was embarrassed, but even more so, she wanted to be close to him. The point of no return had been crossed. Yet, Yui was okay with it. A mix of affection, embarrassment, and various other emotions welled up, creating a floating sensation that made them feel like they were on cloud nine. However, once they arrived at school and homeroom ended, they were brought back to reality. Hey, Yui-chan, Suizaki-kun, Yugi's studying hard, Asuka exclaimed, seeking their help. The midterm exams were just around the corner. Their first regular exams as high school students. Honestly, Yuma had been feeling a bit distracted by his thoughts about Yui, but the primary duty of a student was to study. He couldn't afford to get a failing grade because he was preoccupied with Yui. He wouldn't be able to face it. Yuma pulled himself together. By the way, Asuka, what about Nago? He's better at studying, and you two are dating, so you could ask him for help, right? Trying to study with Nago-kun is like being in a Spartan training camp. Yuma couldn't help but tilt his head internally at those words. Nago might come across as unsociable, but he was generally lenient with people who were genuinely trying to make an effort. In fact, during junior high, he had patiently tutored Asuka, who was far less academically inclined than him and not quite a friend either. It was hard to believe that Nago would suddenly adopt a harsh cramming style. Did you do something to upset him or something? Nah, you know what? The other day when we were hanging out, we started playing Grand Gate at my place. Yeah, and then? We got really into it, right? So, we just entered high school, and I thought we should study properly, but then we played just a little, and it got out of control. Yui, are you okay with the midterm exams? If it's within what I can teach, you can rely on me, you know? Jiga? Please don't abandon me. If I keep going like this, I'll fail. Everyone will be in their second year and going on a school trip, and I'll still be a first year. Sigh. All right, I got it. So, which subjects do you want me to teach you? All of them. Yui, are there any subjects you're not good at? Suizaki-kun, don't abandon me. Chop. Nago delivered a chop to Asuka's head. With an exasperated expression, Nago looked down at Asuka. This time it's your own fault. I'll help you with your studies, so accept it. Fine. Think about your own academic abilities. If you don't study that much, you might really end up failing, and worst case scenario, you'll have to repeat a year. I don't want that, but I get so sleepy whenever I open my notes. You worked hard during exam prep. That was, like, the power of love, you know? I didn't want to be away from Nigo-kun. And I thought if I got good grades, you might kiss me or something, so I felt motivated. Rejected. Isn't that an instant rejection? It's a girl's first kiss, you know? I was joking, but couldn't you have thought about it a bit more? Asuka. With Nigo's calm voice, Asuka stopped making a fuss. Don't sell yourself short. You should do things more properly. Asuka blushed bright red at those words and meekly replied, yes, I'm sorry. Then, if I do well in my studies, can I have a date as my reward? We practically go out for fun almost every week, don't we? Well, I mean, like, a hand-holding date or something. I'd like that. If you manage to avoid failing all subjects, yeah, I'll do my best. Just then, the bell for their first period class rang. Nigo and Asuka returned to their seats. Nigo is really something, huh? Yeah, just watching him unexpectedly makes me nervous. Nigo was not the type to express his emotions openly, but you could still tell that he cared about Asuka from his actions and words. Speaking of which, even though those two are so close, they're still like that, huh? It seems that way. They had been dating since their third year of junior high, so they had assumed they might have kissed by now, at least. However, from their recent conversation, it seemed that they hadn't even gone on hand-holding dates. It must be tough for Asuka too. Yuma let out a wry smile. Speaking of which, he and Yui weren't even officially dating yet, but they frequently held hands, not to mention they hugged, slept together, and yesterday, he had even told Yui's father that he would take good care of his daughter. They were doing things that most couples did after officially getting together. Thinking about it, the next step would be something like a kiss, and that thought crossed his mind at that moment. Hey, Yuma. Yeah? Well, Nigo-kun mentioned it, but, is a first kiss really important for guys too? His heart skipped a beat. Did Yui have similar thoughts to Yuma's? His heart was pounding, almost deafeningly so, but he managed to respond calmly. Well, I guess it's important, right? So, Yuma. Have you, kissed someone before? Exclamation mark. Her question made him remember that time when Yui had stayed over, and he had almost leaned in for a kiss. He stumbled over his words. Taking it differently, Yui's expression shifted to what looked like shock. You have? No, I haven't. I see. Why is she so happy about that? Exclamation mark. Yuma felt like he was going to squirm as Yui giggled with a soft smile. What about you, then? Embarrassed, he decided to turn the question back on her. After all, he had assumed Yui hadn't kissed anyone before. Or so he thought, but her reaction seemed odd. Well, have you? Blushing and hesitating, Yui mumbled, no I haven't. I mean, After mumbling to herself for a moment, Yui took out her smartphone and began typing a message. She pressed the send button, using her phone to hide her expression as she watched Yuma's reaction. Soon, he received a message on her phone. Indirect kisses don't count, right? Come to think of it, they had an indirect kiss when they shared a parfait at a family restaurant. Blushing as he remembered that moment, Yuma sent a reply. Well, I guess indirect kisses don't really count, do they? Then what about the cheeks? Just a few days ago, Yui had performed a little charm on Yuma's cheeks when he was playing possum. Thinking about the sensation of her lips on his cheeks, he felt like he was going to melt, but he managed to maintain a poker face as he replied, no count. What about in dreams? What does she mean by that? Come to think of it, Yuma had previously done quite a few things with Yui in his dreams, including more than just kissing. He had felt so guilty about it when he woke up that he practically writhed in bed. However, now that she was asking about dreams, it made him wonder if Yui had similar dreams, and that thought almost killed him. No count. I see. Well, maybe I haven't done anything either. I see. Looks like we're both newbies at this. Newbies at what? What is this conversation? It was so embarrassing that he felt like he was going to faint. It seemed that Yui was also embarrassed by what she had brought up, as she covered her face with both hands. If he could become Yui's boyfriend, well, these kinds of conversations were probably par for the course, he thought, and once again, he felt like he was on the verge of death. Section. Despite the morning's conversation, time had passed, and now it was after school in the library. Yuma, Yui, Nigo, and Asuka sat around a table. They had talked about studying for the test in the morning, but in the end, these four had decided to hold a study session together. Nigo, acting as the supervisor, cleared his throat and glanced at the other three. I'm thinking we should start by filling in the gaps in our weak subjects. So, what subjects are you each struggling with? I'm not confident in English. Well, for me, it's history-related subjects, especially Japanese history. I'm struggling with all of them. How did you even pass the entrance exam for this school? Well, I don't know. Maybe it's a miracle of love. Nigo sighed with an indescribable expression on his face. Suizaki, Kamishiro-san, I'm sorry, but I'll be focusing on Asuka's studies intensively, so I'd like both of you to help each other out. Sure thing. Good luck, Asuka. In the end, it was the usual pairings, and Yuma leaned in closer to Yui. What specifically do you find challenging in English, Yuma? I'm okay with vocabulary, but grammar gets me sometimes. Especially when it comes to longer sentences. Yeah, it can get confusing since it's different from Japanese. What about you, Yui? I struggle with remembering era names and such. When I read the textbook, I start getting sleepy. History has a lot to remember, after all. Well then, how about we start by reading the textbook for about 10 minutes, and then we can try the mini test the teacher gave us. We can help each other with the parts we don't understand. Sure, I got it. So, they started working on the mini test. Yuma stumbled on the grammar in the longer sentences, but Yui scored a perfect score. Wow, you did great. Well, that's because I've been studying with you, Yuma. But I haven't done anything yet. When Yuma said that, Yui's cheeks turned pink. I'm always excited, so I don't get sleepy. And if I study with you, Yuma, I'm sure I won't forget. Those words made Yuma's heart race even more. Could it be that she's aware of my feelings? Yui has been quite proactive, or rather, sweet, since this morning. Her affection for him was always evident in her words and actions, but today, it felt slightly different. If Yui is being so assertive while being aware of my feelings, then, he swallowed the saliva in his mouth and mustered the courage to speak. Hey, Yui, how about we go on a date once the tests are over? As Yuma said this, Yui's shoulders jumped. Her face was red in bewilderment. Now that Yuma thought about it, this was the first time he had directly asked her out on a date like this. Moreover, he had said it with a somewhat troubled tone. Yui might have sensed something in his words. Do you not want to? No. I want to go. I want to go. Where are we going? I haven't decided yet. Do you have any place in mind? An internet cafe? You really like internet cafes, huh? Yes. There it's just me and Yuma. As she said these somewhat counter-like words, Yuma could feel his cheeks growing warm. Perhaps feeling embarrassed about what she had just said, Yui started fidgeting as well. And, well, going to an internet cafe feels like a standard thing to do when hanging out with you, Yuma. Plus, we haven't played Grand Gate much recently because of our test prep, so I was wondering. That's so. Sure, let's go to an internet cafe then. Why yes. Then, like in spring break, around early afternoon? If it's okay with you. How about we meet in the morning, huh? Yeah, I'm fine with that. That way, we'll have more time together. When Yuma suggested this, Yui blushed bright red, fidgeting and squirming as she mumbled, but Yuma was equally red-faced. They were both reaching their limits. All right, let's get back to studying. It wouldn't look good if we were talking about having fun and then ended up failing our tests. Can you help me with grammar for now? Why yeah. For this question. As they leaned in closer to each other while studying, Yui discreetly reached for Yuma's uniform under the table. Yuma understood her intention and moved his hand under the table as well. Their hands met beneath the table, confirming each other's feelings as they intertwined their fingers. Softly, they held hands while continuing to study. Oh, for this part, It might be better to translate it like this. Ah, I see. So it becomes like this? Yeah, that's right. Yuma, what about this one? Ah, for that one, it's not about memorizing it individually but rather connecting it with this. They continued to help each other, with Yuma explaining when Yui didn't understand, and Yui correcting Yuma when he made mistakes. This was indeed unforgettable. Even if they eventually forgot the content they studied, they would surely remember the happiness of this time forever. However, Yuma noticed that Asuka was looking somewhat displeased. Sorry about that. It's just that seeing people all lovey-dovey in front of someone who's struggling with their studies. You know how it is. We're not being lovey-dovey or anything. It's pretty obvious when you're holding hands under the table, you know? Upon hearing this, they instinctively let go of each other's hands. Asuka, focus on your own work rather than worrying about others. I don't get this stuff at all. I hate math. As Asuka complained, Nigo sighed and gently placed his hand over Asuka's, which had been resting on his notebook. Wait. Nigo-kun. Ignoring Asuka's confusion, Nigo entwined his fingers with Asuka's and held their hands together like a couple. Does this make you feel a little better? Why yes. I'll keep this up while we study, so do your best. I will. Nigo really is something. Yeah, he is. While they were talking, Yui stole a quick glance at Yuma. Once again, she discreetly tugged on Yuma's school uniform under the table. Yuma responded by gently taking hold of Yui's hand. They held hands beneath the table, just like a couple, and continued to study together with the other two until the end. Interlude. One step forward I can't take. A few days have passed since they began their study meeting. On that day, there was a physical education class, and Yui moved to the girls' changing room. Upon entering the changing room, Yui quickly secured a locker in the corner of the room. She began changing into her gym uniform while facing the locker, trying to be discreet. For Yui, who had rarely attended elementary and middle school, changing in front of a large group of people was an experience she had hardly encountered until entering high school. Perhaps because of this, she still felt embarrassed about being seen or seeing others in their underwear, even among people of the same sex. She had been made to change by Nen once before, but that had been driven by the moment, and Nen was skilled at such things, which made a big difference. So on days with physical education, Yui tried her best not to expose her skin and avoid looking at others. She always changed in the corner, trying to be discreet. However, there were some who didn't mind such things at all. Yui-chan. Eek. Just as Yui had taken off her blouse, Asuka hugged her from behind. Looking back, she saw that Asuka was in her underwear. Not only that, Yui could feel the sensation of her soft skin against her own, causing her face to flush. Megyu-chan? Could you put some clothes on? Oh, come on. It's fine between girls, you know. Also, I studied this in the manga Nen lent me the other day. They call this kind of thing Yuri, right? Yui-chan, let's do some Yuri together. Megyu-chan, do you really understand what you're saying? Huh? This is how girls get along, right? Well, yeah, it is. But, it's just, more importantly, Yui-chan, you've been getting along really well with Suizaki-kun lately, haven't you? It's like you're radiating happiness, and it's so cute to watch. What's going on? Are you two already dating secretly? No, it's not. Oh, really? Not yet? With a sly grin, Asuka teased, and Yui blushed deeply. Just then, something happened. Kamishiro-san, you weren't dating Suizaki-kun yet? A classmate nearby asked, causing Yui to stammer. Well, yes. I totally thought you two were dating by now. You always seem so close, especially recently, right? I was sure you've at least kissed. Even more classmates who enjoyed discussing romantic topics gathered closer. While not all the girls were directly involved, Yui could sense that they were paying close attention and listening in on their conversation. Why is everyone so interested in our business? Unbeknownst to Yui, she was actually quite popular among the girls. And that's why they were so curious. In addition to her inherent cuteness resembling a small animal, Yui's affectionate and fluffy interactions with Yuma had made her a precious and adorable presence, quietly establishing herself as a mascot-like figure among the girls. Especially lately, when her increasingly affectionate behavior with Yuma has become more noticeable. Everyone was so curious and eager to hear more. Well, it feels like they're practically dating already. I want a boyfriend too, but honestly, I'm kind of envious of Suizaki-kun. If I were a guy, having a girlfriend like Kamishiro-san would be amazing. While Yui was taken aback by these unexpected words, the other girls expressed agreement. I get it. Honestly, I wouldn't mind dating Kamishiro-san. Seeing her smiling and being affectionate is incredibly cute. It's almost agonizing to watch. The other day, we made a meal together during cooking training, and Kamishiro-san was extremely skillful. Doesn't Kamishiro-san make a lunchbox every day? For Suizaki-kun, she's practically a wife already. What's next? Are they going to get engaged? Suddenly, the girls bombarded Yui with compliments. Yui blushed deeply in response to their unexpected praise. It was incredibly embarrassing, but honestly, she didn't mind being treated as Yuma's girlfriend. In fact, she found it rather pleasing. She could feel the corners of her mouth curling up, but summoning the courage to confess, it's not easy. As Yui muttered this, the other girls around her immediately became excited. Oh, she totally admitted she's in love. Even her ears are as red as they can be. How bold. But seriously, you don't have to force yourself to confess. He'll probably confess to you eventually. It's obvious you both like each other. Yeah, and it's better when guys confess first. Exactly. Kamishiro-san is so lucky. I dream of having a guy I like confess to me. I wonder when he'll confess. With the way things are going, it could happen right after the exams, don't you think? The other girls started discussing when Yuma might confess, and Yui felt so embarrassed that she turned towards the wall. Yui was aware that Yuma liked her, and she believed that given their current situation, he must have sensed her feelings as well. All she had to do was continue showing her affection and wait patiently, and he would eventually confess. It was undoubtedly a situation many girls dreamed of. The boy she loved, Yuma, who utterly adored her, back, confessing his feelings because he was head over heels for her. Just imagining that scene made her heart race. It sent shivers down her spine. However, in a corner of her heart, there was something unsettling. That day, Nigo had some errands to run, so there was no after-school study session. Once again, they headed home together. After getting off the train, they held hands as they walked from the station to their houses. It was a daily, secretly cherished moment of happiness. However, the distance from the station to their homes wasn't that far. They quickly arrived in front of Yui's house. Well, see you tomorrow. Yuma said this as he released her hand, but Yui wanted to spend more time together. Yuma, how about studying at my place today? Boldly, she invited him. So, how about it? If we study at my house, it'll be quiet and we can be alone together. As Yui blushed while speaking, Yuma's face also turned red. He seemed to struggle with something for a moment. Then he nodded slightly. Then, pardon the intrusion. Let's go? Yes. Blushing, Yui and Yuma entered the house together. Wait a second, where are your parents? As soon as they entered and noticed the absence of any signs of people, Yuma said this. They both said they'd be working late today. You really are like that, aren't you? Yuma placed a hand on his forehead and let his gaze wander. Nen had told her about this the other day, that Yuma had a habit of looking around when he got embarrassed or shy. Thinking that he was aware of her presence made Yui's heart skip a beat again. Anyway, Yui guided Yuma to her room and said, I'll go prepare some drinks, before heading downstairs. Even while preparing juice and snacks, Yui's heart continued to race. I'm doing something pretty bold, aren't I? She had let Yuma into her room before and even had him stay overnight, but this time was completely different in every way. Inviting a boy she knew had feelings for her into her room, alone, she understood perfectly what that meant now. No, of course, Yui trusted that Yuma wasn't that kind of person, but there was that 1 in a million chance, and she had invited him into her home understanding that possibility. Yui found her heated face with both hands. Ever since she had realized that she and Yuma shared mutual feelings, her restraint had been slipping away. She wanted to spend even sweeter moments with Yuma. She didn't mind if he noticed that she liked him. In fact, she wanted him to notice. She wanted to be pampered and cherished by him. She loved Yuma so much to the point that she thought he was adorable, and it made her so happy. She couldn't resist. And besides, with Yuma, maybe just a little, exclamation mark. For a moment, she had entertained some strange thoughts, and now she felt like rolling around on the ground, but she couldn't spend too much time, as Yuma might start suspecting something. So she quickly placed the juice and snacks on a tray and returned to her room. When she got back to the room, Yuma had already set up everything for their study session. To tell the truth, Yui wanted to cuddle and be affectionate instead of studying, but it was her idea to suggest, let's study at home. So, she resigned herself to the task and sat across from Yuma, each of them working on their respective practice books. I'm getting nervous. The sound of pens scratching against paper filled the quiet room. Alone at home, just the two of them. Wasn't this an ideal situation for a confession? They both had mutual feelings, so all that was left was to confess. Right now, if she were to say, I love you. Please make me your girlfriend, Yuma. She could become Yuma's girlfriend. Her wish would come true with just one more step. She knew it in her head, but just imagining confessing to Yuma made Yui blush deeply. There was a clear distinction between seeking Yuma's affection and confessing to him, almost like a different level of courage. That being the case, for a moment, she considered doing it via chat, but sure enough, there was no way she could seriously do this. It was just too embarrassing. Her voice wouldn't come out. For that reason, she tried her best to speak up, but her voice wouldn't come out. It reached the back of her throat, but she couldn't get past that point. Yui R? Her. Your pen has been still for a while now. Is there something you don't understand? W what? R, yes. It's right here. Let me see. Saying this, Yuma shifted his chair and sat next to Yui, their shoulders lightly brushing against each other. Because of the thoughts she had just been entertaining, even this contact felt unbearably embarrassing. But despite the embarrassment, whenever she touched Yuma, she felt exponentially happier and couldn't help but want to get closer. Glancing at him, she noticed that Yuma's cheeks were also slightly flushed. Is Yuma feeling the same way? Thinking about this made her chest tighten even more, but it was a happy kind of discomfort. Being like this only made her want even more. If it were possible, she'd abandon studying right now and just hold Yuma tightly. She wanted to feel every part of him, but she couldn't ask for that when they weren't even officially a couple. And like that, in an instant, time seemed to fly by. Before they knew it, it had already gotten dark outside the window. Is it already this late? Yuma was the first to put down his pen. Well, I guess it's time to head home. Feeling disappointed, Yui also put her pen down and closed her notebook. She didn't really want him to leave like this. She still wanted to stay together. However, unable to put her feelings into words or actions, she bid farewell to Yuma that day. After Yuma left, Yui flopped onto her bed and buried her face in her pillow. Impossible. Just as I thought, it's impossible. She wondered why she had been so casually able to say I love you before. She loved him so much, and she was sure he would gladly accept her confession. Despite knowing that, she just couldn't take that final step. Maybe I should wait for Yuma to confess after all. Such self-doubt crept into her thoughts. After the exams, she had been invited for a date by Yuma. Maybe he would confess to her then. So, maybe she should just wait for that. Instead of pushing herself, waiting for Yuma to confess seemed like the easier option. Her classmates had also said they admired the idea of being confessed to by a boy they liked. Maybe that was enough. She found herself thinking about such things while checking the calendar. But when she did that, she felt that vague uneasiness again. The true nature of that unease remained elusive as the days went by. Chapter 4 Date and Confession. The beginning. More time had passed since then, with the midterm exams having safely come to an end. Today, the final day, was a half-day of class. The train was less crowded than usual, and Yuma and Yui sat in their seats, going over the answers to today's test while looking at their textbooks. Looks like I did all right. How about you? I think I did pretty well. If there aren't any calculation errors, I might even aim for a perfect score in math. You're pretty smart, aren't you? Yuma, Did you think I was dumb? Ah. No, not like that. You said you hardly went to school until junior high, so I was just worried about whether or not you'd be okay with your studies. In fact, as they studied together, Yui turned out to be quite proficient in her studies, maybe even a bit better than Yuma. In the beginning, he had been eager to help her study, but now he felt a bit embarrassed about it. Even when I didn't go to school, I still studied properly. I didn't want to cause any more trouble for my parents. Now that she mentioned it, Yui's proficiency in housework was also because she had tried to be helpful to her parents in some way. That kind of dedication was both endearing and heartwarming. But it's surprising that your best subject is math. I have a feeling that many girls struggle in math. Megyu-chan also struggles with it a lot. For me, well, I've been used to looking at numbers from playing games since I was young. In Grand Gate, understanding things like DPS and HPS is important. There are calculations for buffs and debuffs, and you have to do things on the spot. Ah, that makes sense. Playing games does make you better with numbers. Yes. Listen, Yuma, if you want to compete in our test scores? Sure, sounds good, but it's unusual for you to suggest something like this. Hee. I saw it in manga and stuff, and I've always admired that kind of thing. Those words took him by surprise. Until now, Yui couldn't even do ordinary things like competing with friends to see who got the better test score. Thinking about it, he couldn't quite put it into words, but he felt that familiar tightening sensation in his chest. He gently reached out and softly stroked Yui's head to keep her hair from getting disheveled. Yui accepted that gesture with a happy expression. Watching her, he felt his chest tighten again, and he couldn't help but think that he wanted to make up for all the happiness I had missed until now. By the way, about the date we talked about before, does this Sunday work for you? When Yuma said this, Yui reacted with a jerk. Her cheeks flushed slightly, and she nodded with a shy smile. Yeah, I'm okay. So, this Sunday then. I remember we said we'd hang out in the morning, right? Yeah, I said morning. But what time do you want to start? Do you have a preference? Around 8 in the morning? Isn't that a bit too early? I thought we could spend more time together that way. Is that not okay? No, it's fine. So, starting at 8 then. At this point, neither of them was hiding their affection for each other. When they expressed their affection, the other person would reciprocate in the same way. It was irresistibly blissful, joyful, and somewhat embarrassing. In his heart, Yuma once again made up his mind to confess to Yui during their weekend date. In truth, he could have confessed much earlier. However, he had been procrastinating with excuses like it's because of the upcoming exams, as he couldn't muster the courage. But now that the exams were over, it was finally time to gather his resolve. He gently placed his hand over Yui's hand, which had been resting at her side. Yui, with a slightly embarrassed expression, responded by gently squeezing his hand as if she had been waiting for it. They continued to hold hands, feeling each other's touch and warmth without the need for words. He thought they were both feeling the same way. If he were to confess, would Yui be embarrassed? Would she be happy? Once they became a couple, how would their relationship change? Just thinking about it made him want to break into a grin. Trying not to let his lips quiver too much was a bit of a challenge. But before all of that, Yuma had one problem he needed to resolve. Section. Oh, Ani-chan, do you know of any part-time job I could do? During dinner that evening, Yuma brought it up with Nen. Oh, running low on cash? Well, yeah. So, if there's anything I can do, like cleaning the air conditioner filter or helping out at your store, I'd like it all to come my way. Yuma's allowance was paid to him in the form of compensation for doing odd jobs around Nen's place. It was a system where he could earn his allowance by doing tasks like cleaning Nen's room, depending on the work he completed. In other words, he was barely scraping by with his allowance. He and Yui had planned to go to a net cafe date in the morning and eat out for lunch, which, given the allowance situation of a high school student, was quite tight. He wanted to avoid the worst-case scenario of running out of money in the middle of their date and having Yui pay for him. If that happened, he wouldn't even have the chance to confess. Is there something you want to buy? Oh, it's just that the tests are over, and I promised to go out together with Yui on Sunday. It's for your date expenses. Huh? Well, yeah, Yuma replied, looking embarrassed and avoiding eye contact. At that moment, Nen seemed to realize something, her eyes widening briefly. Then, she smiled broadly. But if that's the case, I can't make you do chores like laundry. Yui-chan might not like the idea of you touching my underwear to earn money for your date. Is that how it works? It varies from person to person, I think, but Yui-chan seems pretty possessive, so she might not like it. In that case, how about I lend you some money in advance? I'd rather not do the advanced thing. Well, how about this then? I'll just give you an allowance with no strings attached. I support you both, and I'd be happy if you two had a fun date. Consider it a treat. A treat for you too. Ani-chan, that's a no-go. Even if we're family, I want to handle money matters responsibly. Yu-gun, you're so serious about these things. However, what Yuma was saying was indeed correct. Nen didn't press further and tried to think of another solution. Then, an idea seemed to strike her, and she clapped her hands together. Well, how about both of you work as models? Modeling? Yeah, remember the first time you and Yui-chan came to my store? You both dressed up in various costumes, right? You both looked so cute back then, and it gave me so much motivation and inspiration for making new clothes afterwards. So, I'd like you to do it again. Plus, I think it would be a fun memory for both of you to create together. Is that okay with you? Ani-chan, especially with me as a model? Of course. Yu-gun, you probably have more potential than you think. Besides, it would be a bit pitiful to have only Yui-chan do it. Don't get carried away and make us wear weird clothes just because you're paying us, okay? Are you hinting that you want Yui-chan to wear something sexy? I'll get mad. Haha, sorry. Don't worry. I'll keep everything within the bounds of common sense. Well, if that's the case, I'll talk to Yui about it. While he wanted to handle money matters responsibly, doing modeling as a part-time job seemed like a good idea. After discussing it with Yui, they had a brief meeting with Nen, and they decided to add the modeling gig to their Sunday date plan section. And then, on the day of their date, Yuma woke up early and took a shower. Phew. He took a deep breath to calm his nerves. He was already so nervous that his heart was pounding loudly. He couldn't help but worry if he could maintain this level of nervousness until the end. Today, he would confess to Yui. He was pretty confident that they both felt the same way, and he believed that she would accept his confession with joy. He knew that, but this was still his first time doing something like this, so he couldn't help but feel nervous. However, he couldn't let himself be solely preoccupied with the confession. First, he had to make sure Yui had a good time. If he messed it up, there would be nothing left to salvage. After going through multiple simulations in his head, he finished his shower. Nen had left earlier, citing some preparations, so Yuma was alone at home now. He thought about waiting in the living room on the sofa until it was time to leave to pick up Yui, but sure enough, he just couldn't calm down. It's a bit early, but maybe I should head out. Although it was still a bit too early to go and pick up Yui, Yuma decided it was better to leave home now rather than sit there anxiously. He could kill some time by wandering around. Like that, he left the apartment and took a leisurely stroll. Today, the weather was fortunate, with clear skies and no issues according to the weather forecast. While Yuma thought about how lucky they were not to have to deal with rain on their date, suddenly, he remembered something that happened a little while ago. Back when Yui's social anxiety and complexes were more severe, there was a time when she had tried to come to his house alone but failed. They had a minor argument then, but Yui quickly made up and came over to apologize. It was during the time that she had asked him for help in overcoming her social anxiety. Looking back, that had been a turning point. It was the catalyst that deepened his relationship with Yui. Lost in these memories, he noticed a figure on the other side of the road. Yui's white hair stood out even from a distance. It seemed she had also noticed him and began to wave her hand, rushing over toward him. Yuma, good morning. Good morning. What's up? Isn't it still early for our meetup time? Yeah, I couldn't wait, so I came early. You too, Yuma? Well, yeah, it's the same for me. Really? Perhaps because they had the same reason for coming early. Yui smiled shyly. Seeing Yui like that, Yuma softened his gaze. You've grown. Haven't you? Huh? Sorry. I was talking about myself. Anyway, it's a bit early, but should we head out? Yeah, sure, let's take it slow. They began to walk together. It felt like soaking in lukewarm water, a warm and airy time that was pleasant. So, we're starting with the modeling job at Nen-san's store, right? Yeah, that's the plan. Is it really okay? It's technically a part-time job, but when we did cosplay before, it was fun, and it feels a bit wrong to get paid for it. They're the ones offering to pay, so don't worry about it. More importantly, if they try to make you wear something really uncomfortable or do something you don't like, make sure to speak up, okay? There's a possibility Nen might suggest something more extreme because she's offering to pay this time. I don't think Nen-san would suggest anything weird, though. If she goes into serious mode, it should be fine, but there's a risk of Nen-san going into overdrive. Yui chuckled. Even though he said that, deep down, Yuma was looking forward to it. When Nen went into overdrive, things could get a little wild, but when it came to makeup and costumes, she was a pro. She had been enthusiastic since morning, so she would surely make Yui look exceptionally cute today. As they continued walking, Yuma noticed that Yui was glancing at his hand from time to time. Want to hold hands? It seemed Yui was happy that the message got across without words. Yuma took Yui's hand, interlocking their fingers as they walked, and she smiled with happiness. Holding hands like this had become a familiar gesture, but the sweet feeling of happiness that it brought remained unchanged from the beginning. From now on, Yuma wanted Yui to be by his side, preferably even as they grew older. Reaffirming his determination to confess today, the two of them walked towards Nen's shop. They leisurely made their way there and eventually arrived in front of Nen's shop. Since it was still before opening hours, a preparing sign was hanging on the door. Even though they were family, entering a shop before it opened somehow felt a bit awkward. Yuma gently pushed the door and peeked inside. "Ani-chan, we're here." "Pardon the intrusion." As they called out, they nervously slipped into the shop through the slightly ajar door. Looks like they've arrived. However, what was unexpected was the presence of multiple people besides Nen. "Is that Yui-chan? Wow, your hair really is white. So the manager's little brother is real." "I thought it was some kind of fantasy, like a high school boy living with an unrelated DK, male high school student, and he's quite cute, too." "I envy the manager." Following Nen, 3 adult women appeared. There was a casually stylish older sister, one whose eye was partially covered by her hair, and another dressed in a more androgynous style. It seemed they were staff members of the shop. "Ani-chan, I didn't hear about other people being here." Yuma stepped forward to protect Yui and gave Nen a stern look. "Sorry about that. I should have told you in advance, but it's okay. You can trust these girls." Even after her reassurance, Yuma still seemed dissatisfied. Then, Yui tugged on his clothes lightly. "Yuma, I'll be okay, you know. Don't hold back, alright? If something makes you uncomfortable, make sure to speak up." "Yeah, thanks for worrying about me." Seeing the way they interacted, the 3 people Nen had brought along were sparkling with admiration, saying, "They're cute, precious, and I ship them." In a sense, they did seem trustworthy. "We don't have much time, so let's get started. Come on, Yui-chan." "Huh? Aren't we changing in the dressing room?" "This time, the dressing room is a bit cramped, so we can't do it there." "At any rate, the 4 of us are going to help you change, so how about we go to the locker room?" "It's okay." "We'll be gentle." "The way you said that makes it sound kind of creepy, so cut it out." With that, Yui was led to the back of the shop. Yuma, feeling a bit uneasy, followed after her. "All right, Yui-kun, wait here for a bit. We'll start working on you once we're done with Yui-chan." In the shop's backyard, Nen said this to Yuma in front of the locker room. Honestly, his anxiety didn't dissipate. In fact, the image of 4 adult women taking a petite girl like Yui into the locker room was nothing but worrying. "Nen, she'll be fine, right? I mean, she'll really be okay, right?" "She'll be totally fine. Those girls won't do anything weird to someone who is a partner." Doesn't that imply that they might do something weird if there isn't a partner present? Seeing Yuma's increasingly anxious expression, Nen chuckled. Just don't worry about it. We're going to put all our effort into making her look incredibly cute. With that, Yui was taken into the locker room. Yuma waited anxiously in front of the door. As a guy, waiting for girls to change like this made him feel quite uncomfortable. And then it happened. Do I have to change my underwear too? The shop was quiet, so Yui's voice could be heard from inside the locker room. Of course, fashion includes paying attention to the things you can't see. But it's embarrassing. It's okay. We also do cosplay on a regular basis, so we're used to seeing this. Oh? But you're already wearing something quite cute. Is it maybe your special underwear? No. It's just, I heard we were doing cosplay, so. Wow, so you intentionally chose something cute thinking it might be seen in front of your boyfriend. Hee, that's adorable. I don't have a boyfriend. You're denying that part? Exclamation mark. Hee, you're turning all red. It's so cute. A shy, bashful girl who's trying her best to seduce the boy she likes. I ship it. I like girls like that too. How about I teach you my way of seducing guys? I feel like I've accidentally overheard a conversation I shouldn't have. Feeling quite awkward, Yuma continued to wait for Yui to finish changing. After a while, the door clicked open. Sorry to keep you waiting, Yui-kun. Check out the first look I've got for you. Sure. All right, Yui-chan, come here. It's okay. You don't have to be shy. You look adorable, you know? Well, Nen-san, this, what is something the matter? Exclamation mark. No, it's nothing. Yui took her time coming out, but from her voice, it was clear that she was feeling incredibly embarrassed. Yuma was a bit apprehensive, wondering if the cosplay was too extreme, but when Yui finally revealed herself, she was dressed in a somewhat unexpected outfit. She wore a high-waisted dark skirt with a corset-like design at the waist, paired with a blouse adorned with a ribbon at the neckline, giving her a modest and refined appearance. However, despite the very minimal exposure, there was something strangely captivating about her outfit. His heart raced. Why does this outfit feel so familiar? Wait, isn't this the kind of clothing that kills virgins? Sometimes you come across it on the internet, the infamous virgin killing outfit designed to specifically target virgins. Yui, being well versed in internet culture, probably knew exactly what kind of outfit she was wearing, and her face turned beet red as she felt embarrassed. Although Yuma felt a bit resentful of Nen and her friends for choosing such an outfit right from the start, it was undeniably effective. He couldn't help but avert his gaze from Yui. Nen and her friends watched the two of them, blushing and feeling embarrassed, with smirks on their faces. What's the matter, Yui-kun? In times like these, it's proper etiquette to convey your thoughts to the girl. Well, yeah, you're cute. I think. Indeed, Yui was undeniably cute in that outfit, and the way she blushed only added to her charm. All right, that's a good reaction. So, Yui-chan, shall we move on to the next one? What? There's more. He couldn't help but think that, but he managed to hold back from saying it out loud. He was already in a critical state from the initial outfit, and he wondered what would happen if they continued to barrage him with more. Afterwards, Yui's fashion show began. She wore a white dress, then switched to a Lolita style, a girly look, and even experimented with outfits she wouldn't normally wear, like boyish attire, miniskirts with pants underneath, coordinated accessories, and slightly punk-inspired clothing. Yuma, how about this? Do I look good in it? As she got more comfortable, Yui started asking for his opinion on her outfits. Despite feeling embarrassed in these unfamiliar outfits, Yui seemed happier with Yuma's cute comments and gazed up at him with hopeful eyes. Yeah, I think you look cute. Hee, Yuma, you've been saying everything is cute since a while ago, haven't you? Well, you're really cute. So Yui's expression softened at Yuma's words. Nen muttered something quietly like this girl definitely has talent, but Yuma decided not to pay it any mind. If Yuma likes this sort of thing, should we go with outfits like this for our next date? Yuma suddenly realized something after hearing Yui's words. Despite trying on various outfits, Yui hadn't worn anything resembling cosplay so far. Even the current attire would be considered fashionable for a regular day out. It almost seemed as if she were picking out clothes specifically for their upcoming date. Yuma thought about this when Nen suddenly clapped her hands. "All right, you've tried on all the clothes you wanted. Now I'll work on Yuma, so you three can focus on Yui's makeup and such." "Yes, now then, Yuma, your hair has grown a bit. Shall we go to the hair salon first for a little trim?" And with that, Yuma and Nen moved to the adjacent hair salon. "Even though it hasn't been that long, it feels like quite some time has passed since we last cut your hair," Nen remarked as she deftly wielded the scissors, trimming Yuma's hair while he sat in the chair. "Wasn't the last time we came here just a little over 2 months ago? I thought you'd be more eager to dress up Yui, considering it's you, Ani-chan." "It's fine, really. This time, we have slightly different plans." "Different plans?" "Oh come on. Don't worry about it." "Yui-chan, she's really changed quite a bit, hasn't she?" "She may still be shy around strangers, but she's able to talk to the people she just met." "That's right. She's also managed to handle things at school." He, Yui-kun, you've been doing great. Big sister is so proud of you, you know." "Hey, don't hug me, cut it out, Ani-chan." Yuma let out a yelp as he felt a soft touch on his back. On the other hand, Nen's expression grew a bit serious, and she whispered softly in Yuma's ear, "You've noticed Yui-chan's feelings by now, haven't you?" "Why are you asking out of the blue like that? I'm answering a question with a question." "So, have you?" "Probably. Even the most clueless guy would eventually notice. I've realized it, that Yui loves me, and it's probably more than just friendship or affection." All right. "With this, it's mutual, so all that's left is to confess." "Just confessing is the hardest part, you know." "Yeah, that's why, as your Ani-chan, I'm here to give my adorable little brother a push." "What do you mean by that?" "Don't worry about it. Anyway, your haircut is done, so how about we apply a bit of wax to your hair after the shampoo, then we'll do your makeup." "Makeup? Are we really going that far?" "Of course. Makeup can make a girl look cute in no time, you know, and it can also make a guy look cool too." "To be honest, I'm a bit opposed to that." "Don't be so picky. If you keep complaining, I'll do your makeup to make you look like an undeniably cute girly boy." "Wait, is that not a bad idea? You actually have a pretty cute face, and if we dress you up in cute clothes, girly boy meets girl could work, don't you think?" "Please just do regular makeup, I beg you." Nen muttered something unsettling, so he immediately relented. "My sister, if she goes too far, she might actually do it." Afterwards, she gave him a proper makeup session and handed him a set of clothes. Is there something wrong with it?" "No, it's more normal than I expected." She gave him a clean white blouse and neatly ironed black pants. Honestly, Yuma had expected to receive more cosplay-like clothes, but what he got was quite normal. He could actually go outside without any issue. Or rather, it looked perfectly clean and cool. He changed into the clothes they handed him and stood in front of the mirror, feeling a bit embarrassed about having such thoughts about himself. However, he couldn't help but think that he looked really good in them. Nen, who usually acts like that, impressively showed her professionalism in times like these. Her choice of hairstyle, makeup, and outfit all matched perfectly. "All right, you did a great job." Nen also seemed satisfied with how he turned out. Just then, her phone rang. Nen glanced at the screen and smiled. "It looks like Yui-chan is finished too. Shall we go?" Sure." When they returned to the boutique, Yui had already finished changing and applying makeup, waiting for them. Yui was dressed in a white blouse with a calm blue ribbon tied at the chest and a dark high-waisted skirt. While her outfit was reminiscent of the virgin killing outfit style he had first seen, it emphasized a more elegant and demure look, with fewer frills. It seemed that the charm of this kind of attire was indeed effective on young men, and even though he felt frustrated, Yuma couldn't help but be captivated by her appearance. However, Yui, just like Yuma, blinked in surprise at Yuma's different appearance. Her cheeks quickly flushed with color as she met his gaze, and she immediately averted her eyes. Thanks for waiting." Yeah, thank you. So that's the outfit that you'll be wearing? Yes. What do you think? Cute. It suits you. Hee, thank you. Yuma, you look handsome too, you know? Yeah, thanks. It's just kind of embarrassing, you know? Yeah, I get that. They exchanged somewhat awkward words. The three shop staff and Nen seemed to be giving each other thumbs up as if saying good job. To hide his embarrassment, Yuma scratched his head and looked at Nen. Ani-chan, what are we doing next? More photos like before? Nah. We're done with the part-time job now. I'll pay you guys, so go on a date together. Huh? Wait a minute, sis. Oh, and you don't need to return the clothes, alright? In fact, you should wear them. What's your intention here? Yuma was starting to catch on to Nen's plan. Modeling was just a pretext, and Nen had probably picked out their date outfits. While he did think Yui looked cute, and he himself didn't look too bad, he couldn't help but feel awkward about the situation. If I'm going to get paid, I want to do it properly, okay? You're so earnest. But don't worry, we're already very satisfied. Yeah, like the boss said, we've turned you two into a stylish couple. Just imagining it is enough to fill us up for 3 meals. Anyway, just go along with it. But still hesitant, Nen gently leaned closer to him, her lips almost touching his ear as she whispered. Today, you're planning to confess to Yui-chan, right? What? So, consider this as Ani-chan's support for her cute little brother. Take it quietly. With words like that, there was nothing more to say, and so, the two of them accepted their pay and left the store. Chapter 5 Date and Confession. The beginning. Fidget. After leaving Nen's store, the two of them walked down the road to the bus stop with slightly awkward steps. Even though walking together was something they often did, being dressed up like this made them feel somewhat restless. Moreover, Yui has been sending him furtive glances. She glanced over at him as if stealing glances, and when it seemed like her eyes were about to meet Yuma's, she hurriedly looked ahead. She had been doing this repeatedly since a while ago. Yui? Why yes. Why are you using polite language? That's because I'm feeling a little nervous, and I don't want Yuma to see me. You don't want me to see you? Why, Yuma? You used to tell me often that I should have self-awareness, but you should have some self-awareness too. Self-awareness? The Yuma now is incredibly, unbelievably handsome. You know? Those words made his cheeks flush. He wanted to reply with Yui's incredibly pretty too, but due to the lack of experience, he couldn't smoothly say something like that. Feeling embarrassed, he averted his gaze. Yui had always been pretty, but with her makeup done perfectly like this, the current Yui became a little more mature and, at the same time, he felt that she was cute and pretty. She was an unquestionable beauty. He was on a date with such an exceptionally beautiful girl. If he wasn't misunderstanding, Yui probably liked him too, and it was mutual. Thinking that way, he couldn't contain the excitement building up inside him. The date had just begun, but it felt like his heart was about to burst. However, as they passed by the coffee shop, their reflections appeared in the window glass. The two of them, now dressed up nicely from Nen's shop, looked incredibly picturesque. It felt somewhat narcissistic to have such an impression, and it was embarrassing, but he felt that with his current appearance, he wouldn't pale in comparison to Yui even if he stood next to her. That's what he thought. He felt like he understood the meaning of what Nen said before, that fashion is armor. Once again, he took a deep breath. Honestly, he was extremely embarrassed, but he gathered the courage to take a step forward. Do you want to hold hands? Towards this, Yui's shoulders reacted with a jump. Do you not want to? No. I want to. Confirming her words, Yuma took Yui's hand in his, entwining their fingers like that of lovers. He could feel his face burning. His heart was pounding loudly. But, he held Yui's hand more firmly than usual, as if to convey his feelings, as if to say he didn't want to let go. In response, Yui squeezed his hand back with more strength than usual. Glancing at her briefly, he noticed that her face was bright red, as if it could release steam any moment, and she was looking down. However, he didn't separate their hands, and he could sense that Yui also didn't want to be apart. Keeping it as it is, The both of them boarded the bus and took their seats. Being able to sit down allowed them to catch their breath, and they both exhaled the air that had built up in their lungs. At the same time, Yui let out a relieved sigh, and they both chuckled. Before long, the bus began to move. "Yuma, you know, you're really cool," Yui murmured, as if it had slipped out. "I'd say it's more of my sister's makeup skills being great than me being cool." "No, not just your appearance. Ever since we first met, you've been cool, you know." "Do you remember the first day we met?" "Of course I do." "Back then, Yuma, you were so cool, and you treated me so well. I thought you were just wonderful the way you were. It's nothing special, really. We're friends. Hee hee. That's what I like about you, Yuma." That like seemed to carry various meanings to the extent that it was agonizingly embarrassing. Yui was also embarrassed, and yet, she lightly leaned her weight against him, rubbing her cheek affectionately against his and pressing against his shoulder. His heart had been pounding relentlessly since a while ago, causing him to feel slightly dizzy. Even so, it was clear that she was indirectly conveying her affection to him by doing all of this. Yui's warmth and weight on his arm felt comforting. In response, Yuma also tilted his head slightly toward Yui. Yui's hair had a nice fragrance, causing his heart to feel light and fluttery. They lightly moved their clasped hands, confirming each other's warmth and touch. From an outsider's perspective, there was no doubt they would be thought of as a couple. In fact, they might already be seen as an overly affectionate couple, but more than the embarrassment of that, Yuma wanted to feel Yui's warmth. Afterwards, they arrived at the internet cafe as planned. Standing in front of the shop and looking up at the sign, it reminded Yuma of the days they had spent together during the spring break. "It's been a long time since we came here." "Yes, it has." They entered the shop and headed straight to the reception desk. "Welcome." "Oh, long time no see, huh?" "Ah, it's been a while." That friendly voice that greeted them belonged to the older sister receptionist who had checked them in multiple times during their spring break. It took her a moment to recall Yuma, but with Yui by his side, it must have left an impression on her. "I've been thinking that you haven't been here lately." "School started, and coming here frequently is financially challenging." "Ah, I see." "What a shame. Actually, your visits were like a daily source of comfort for me." "Comfort?" "Yes. Every time your girlfriend came, I could see her expression soften, and you two getting closer. It just seemed so cute." Come to think of it, the receptionist had been witnessing their growing closeness since the beginning. Thinking about it, it made him feel somewhat embarrassed. Quickly, they checked in and headed straight toward their room. The room they entered was their usual flat-style room, where they took off their shoes and stepped onto a mat. Once they were in the room, Yui, still blushing, seemed like she wanted to say something. "Is something wrong?" "Just now, the receptionist earlier, she called me your girlfriend." "Huh?" "Ah." He had forgotten to deny it. My bad." No. It's okay." "But, sorry. It's nothing." Yui continued to fidget with her words and started taking off her shoes, as if trying to divert the topic. Yuma also removed his shoes, and they both sat down in front of the computer. They were still a bit nervous. Although it was a room for two people, it was still quite small. They couldn't help but be conscious of each other. Kind of late to be doing this, but she's a little on guard too. In the past, they had thought of each other as best friends and almost like siblings, so he understood it to some extent. But now, they were fully aware that they were of the opposite sex. They knew that they were both aware of each other. Moreover, their current feelings seemed to be intensifying. In such a confined space, what would I do if she made a move on me? Supposing Yuma were to turn into a wolf, he could easily overpower Yui. Of course, he would never do something like that, but he hoped she would be a little cautious. While starting up the grand gate, Yuma glanced at Yui. She was sitting cross-legged and had buried her face in her knees, seemingly overcome with embarrassment. It's not good for guys' hearts when girls sit cross-legged in skirts, so he wished she hadn't did that. Cough. "So, what are we doing today?" There aren't any urgent events to rush through, so how about we go hunting somewhere?" "That sounds good. Then, how about the Thunder Plains?" "There's a massive Thunderbird spawn happening there right now, and I need a ton of their materials for the Thunder God equipment I'm crafting." Yes, that works. Do you have any lightning-resistant accessories? Take one with you. It can be dangerous there without them. Don't worry, I've got that covered. All right then. I'll go run around and gather Thunderbirds. So Yuma, please handle area attacks. Got it? Having such a conversation is nice, Yuma thought. While girls playing games weren't rare these days, girls who could have in-depth discussions about games like this were rare. Lately, he had become very aware of Yui as a girl he liked, but her relationship with him as gamer female friend was also very comfortable and enjoyable. The more time they spent together, the more Yuma's feelings for Yui grew. To be frank, in the corner of his heart, there was that cowardly feeling of wanting to postpone confessing even now. However, his desire to be in a relationship with Yui was increasing more than anything else. But maybe because of all this, he couldn't help but think about unnecessary things. Someday, getting married to Yui, having children, and playing games together as a family would be happiness. What? I told you already, stop doing that. Even I find such fantasies disgusting. He scolded himself harshly in his mind. Although it was inevitable to be aware of the girl he liked, thinking about marriage and children when they hadn't even started dating yet was definitely going too far. As for the game, Schwarz was doing exactly as planned, drawing the aggro of the Thunderbirds and gathering them. Seeing Schwarz being chased by dozens of Thunderbirds was rather surreal. That's when Human unleashed the highly powered explosion spell. The screen displayed a massive damage output, and the Thunderbirds disappeared, leaving behind a wealth of experience points and dropped items. Like that, the two of them continued hunting for a while, with Schwarz gathering the Thunderbirds, and Yuma blowing them away. It fell into the category of what you might call routine gameplay, but when they played together, even monotonous tasks became enjoyable. Midway through the game, when lightning struck in an unexpected direction and Schwarz was on the verge of death, they laughed it off and managed to pull through. Those were the kind of sparkling moments that passed by. As they continued playing the game for a while, Yui suddenly spoke up. You know, listening to the thunder like this makes me remember the first time we had a sleepover. Right. During his overnight stay at Yui's house, there was a thunderstorm in the middle of the night, causing Yui to become frightened and hug onto Yuma tightly as she slept. That time had been quite eventful, in various ways. By the way, weren't you afraid of thunder back then? The thunder plains are full of lightning, but are you okay with it now? I'm fine with the game's thunder. It's not so much that I'm scared of thunder itself, but more like I'm afraid of the sound. You know, the sudden flash and then a bit later, it goes boom. That's what I'm afraid of. Yui's use of sound effects as she explained was somehow heartwarming. Hee. When I was scared, you hugged me tightly all throughout the night. I'm sorry about that. Why are you apologizing? Well, it's just that doing that to a girl might not have been a good idea. I was happy, you know? No, I've told you multiple times already, but you're way too defenseless around guys. Honestly, it makes me worry when I see it. You should be a little more cautious, but I wouldn't do that with anyone except you. No, that's not what I meant. It's just, I'm a guy too, and there's a limit to how much I can hold back. Right after Yuma said that, Yui's cheeks dyed red. Embarrassed, she shrank her body slightly before typing rapidly in the chat. So you were holding back, Yuma? No, that's not, ? That was a major slip of the tongue. Yuma also fumbled with his words and typed in the chat just like Yui. I'm really sorry. It's okay. You're a boy, after all. Can't be helped. Meow. Anyway, men are like that, so you be careful too. You wouldn't like it if someone looked at you that way, right? No, I wouldn't mind. For a moment, Yuma thought he might have been hallucinating his own desires, but Yui, blushing even redder, continued, if it's you, Yuma, even if it's embarrassing, I wouldn't mind being looked at like that. His heart was pounding, unlike before when he had been oblivious to such things. Clearly, Yui had said this with a lot of thought and intention. A strange tension began to fill the air. He glanced at Yui. Their eyes met unintentionally. Yui, her ears now red as well, looked a bit teary-eyed. You regret saying that, don't you? Yes, I regret it. It's very embarrassing. Please forgive me. All right. It's over. Let's end this conversation. He decided to cut the conversation short. It felt like things were getting dangerously intense. Nevertheless, Yui's hand lightly touched Yuma's. Her hand gently caressed his, as if asking, "Is it okay to touch?" Despite the atmosphere being like this, Yui, who was still defenseless, felt a slight dizziness. However, Yuma also lightly held Yui's hand and squeezed it back. Both of them exchanged glances, trying to gauge each other's reactions. Their hearts were pounding. While they had been alone in confined spaces before, this atmosphere was entirely new to them. Initially, their hands only made light contact, but gradually, their reservations faded away. They touched. They stroked. They held hands, unable to resist any longer. Yuma reached out and firmly grasped Yui's hand. Yui stiffened momentarily, but she quickly responded as if she had been hoping for this to happen. Their hands intertwined softly. Their fingers entwined. They were both so nervous that sweaty palms were a concern. "Hey, Yuma." Yui broke the silence, her voice carrying a soft, melting tone, causing Yuma's heart to race even more. "What's wrong?" "Squeeze me, Yuma." "Huh?" "Similar to what we did before." "I want to sit on your legs, Yuma. Afterwards, I want you to hug me from behind. Is that okay?" "Yeah, that's okay." Despite thinking that they should probably stop considering the atmosphere, Yuma agreed. As Yuma shifted slightly in the beanbag chair and crossed his legs, Yui lifted her hips and with a puff, sat herself down on top of his legs. The sensation of her sitting on his lap sent his rationality into a frenzy. Continuing as it is, Yui leaned her back against him, and it was utterly irresistible. Yuma's head spun from the sweet fragrance that surrounded her. "Yuma," responding to her voice that sounded like a plea. Yuma wrapped his arms around Yui's delicate body. This time, he squeezed a little tighter. The warmth, the touch, the weight, and the sweet scent wafting from her hair, all of it was pure happiness. It was embarrassing, but they were alone in this confined space, with no one else to worry about. "But this atmosphere, like I thought, it's a little dangerous." From the very beginning, his heart has been racing non-stop. But it's changed a bit, or rather, the type of excitement has changed. For Yuma, who was a healthy high school boy in the midst of puberty, this situation was pure torture. But above anything else, what was most different this time was that Yui seemed to be aware of the changing atmosphere too. It was clear that the air between them was getting strange, and Yui was aware of it. And yet, even though she seemed embarrassed, she didn't seem completely unwilling. If anything, there was a hint of anticipation in her demeanor. "Shouldn't we go for lunch about now?" He was already at his limit in various ways. Yuma spoke with a slightly elevated voice, bringing Yui back to her senses. "Why yes," she replied, and then they separated. In any case, they couldn't stay in this small room any longer. They quickly gathered their things and left the room. When they were checking out, the older sister receptionist noticed the two of them blushing and avoiding eye contact. She wondered if there was some strange misunderstanding. Leaving the store, the awkward atmosphere persisted. However, what was even more bewildering was that Yui had her hand on her chest, trying to calm herself down. That meant she was feeling just as nervous about that atmosphere. Yuma doubted that she was consciously aware of it, but this kind of thing had a pretty powerful effect on a teenage boy. Alright, then, for lunch. What do you want to eat?" Nothing in particular. How about you, Yuma?" "Me too." "Then, let's just wander around near the station and decide." "Okay." They started walking towards the station. "Yuma, wait. You're walking too fast." Sorry." Normally, Yuma would match his pace to Yui's, but he was feeling so embarrassed that he had unintentionally sped up. Today, he had intended to escort Yui properly, but he found himself completely flustered and couldn't help but chuckle at his own nervousness. That's when Yui gently tugged at his sleeve, as if she was subtly saying that she wanted to hold hands again. Despite having mixed feelings, he took his hand in hers, intertwining their fingers like that of lovers. While Yui was blushing, there was also a faint smile on her lips. She was clearly delighted to be interacting with Yuma in this way. "That's just the way she is." Yuma silently muttered these words in his mind, not sure how many times he'd thought this before. In any case, the two of them headed toward the station. The area around the station was bustling with plenty of restaurants and cafes. They could go into a coffee shop or a family restaurant, or even buy something from a street vendor for a snack while strolling around. As they contemplated their options, Yui spotted a crepe food truck parked in the station square. "Hey, Yuma. Want to eat that?" "Crepes sounds good." Ever since she had enjoyed that parfait with such delight, Yuma had been thinking that Yui had a sweet tooth. She sounded a bit more cheerful now. They approached the crepe stand, looking at the menu and considering which flavor to choose. Yui was apparently having a hard time to decide, as her gaze kept moving from one end of the menu to the other. At the way she was acting, Yuma and the staff watched her with amused smiles. After a while, Yui ordered a crepe with plenty of cream and strawberries, while Yuma went for a chocolate one. They received their crepes and sat down on a nearby bench. "Hee, eating this makes me feel like a high school student." "What's that supposed to mean?" he said in response to Yui's words, chuckling. But he understood what she meant. Moments like these were probably what they called a page from their youth. "Speaking of crepes, it reminds me of Asuka from middle school." "Megyu-chan?" "Yeah, in our third year, during the cultural festival, Asuka set up a crepe stand." She was obsessed with it, saying things like, "I won't serve anything less than a point of pride for Kansai people." "Are crepes considered a point of pride for Kansai people?" "Well, you could say that." But it was more about how she inspired our class to get creative, offering various toppings and making chocolate sauce unlimited. As he spoke, Yuma realized his mistake. Bringing up other girls during a date was a big no-no, according to an article Yuma had read online for dating advice. His lack of dating experience was showing at an inconvenient time. At this, he checked to see if Yui was making an unhappy face. "That sounds nice," Yui murmured with a hint of sadness. "Yui? Oh. Well, Megyu-chan, Nigo-kun, and Nen-san have all known you longer than me, and I envy that." She said this while casting her gaze downward. "Supposing I had met you earlier, maybe I wouldn't have become such a shut-in, and we could have made even more fun memories together. I can't help but think about that sometimes." "Sorry, I'm saying something strange." "No, it's okay." Yuma reassured her, but he couldn't help but notice that Yui's expression seemed just a tad bit lonely. Despite getting to know each other through the game before, they had only recently met in person. Moreover, before they met in person, they didn't even know each other's personalities, let alone their genders. Yui understood that it was pointless to dwell on it, but she couldn't help but feel disappointed. If she had gotten to know him earlier, if she had met him earlier, maybe she wouldn't have been able to make many more sweet memories. "But for me, right now, you're number one." Words like that just slipped out. Yui looked at him with surprise. "As far as I'm concerned, right now, you're the most important one to me." "Something like happy memories or sweet memories. From now on, we can create countless of them together." He said it and immediately felt a pang of regret. It might have sounded a bit too cool, even if it had just slipped out unintentionally. But as he nervously observed her reaction, he saw her blushing deeply and blinking her eyes, appearing shy yet happy. Then, she inched closer as if trying to cuddle. "Thank you. Then, let's make many more memories together, okay?" "Yeah." Saying that, Yui seemed to come up with an idea as she suddenly focused her attention on the crepe in her hand. The strawberry one is delicious." "I see, that's good." "Why yes. But, your chocolate one looks delicious too." "Right? Yeah, it's pretty tasty." "Yes." "So, hey, right away, let's create happy memories." Blushing and stumbling over her words, Yui kept sending glances toward Yuma. Somehow, Yuma understood what Yui wanted. "Should we share it together?" "Why yes." Having mustered the courage to say that, Yui seemed pleased that he had understood her feelings and smiled happily. "Well then, here you go." Making an effort to take the lead, Yuma offered the crepe to Yui. Yui blushed deeply, glancing back and forth between Yuma and the crepe. She then opened her small mouth wide and took a big bite of the crepe. With her face still red, she chewed and swallowed. "Is it good?" Yui looked like steam might be coming out of her face by now. Despite that, she timidly offered the crepe to Yuma this time. Well, Yuma, please have some." "Yeah, trying to maintain a poker face as much as possible. Yuma's heart had been racing since a while ago. After all, this was clearly an indirect kiss. Yui, with a completely red face, held out the crepe while anxiously waiting for Yuma to eat it. Hiding his nervousness as best as he could, Yuma took a bite of Yui's crepe. When he did, Yui trembled for a moment, looking cute like a small animal. Is it delicious? Yeah, I see. Yui blushed with embarrassment but had a happy expression as she slightly opened her mouth. The fact that the girl she liked was so aware of this indirect kiss with her was overwhelming for Yuma in various ways. Chapter 6 State and Confession. The latter. After finishing their lunch, the two of them headed to a game arcade. As it was a holiday, there were many people. The moment they entered, they were overwhelmed by the electronic sounds of games and the jingling of medals. Huh? What? The sound. It's way too loud. As they wandered near the game arcade while walking around, Yui mentioned that she had never been inside one. Upon entering, they confirmed that it was indeed quite noisy. However, it seemed that their gamer spirit had taken over, as they both showed a keen interest in the multitude of games lined up. They restlessly looked around, their excitement suddenly rising. Since we're here, wanna try something? Well, I do enjoy watching, but I haven't really played fighting games or anything like that before. Huh. I thought you were the type who would play any game. I'm not very good with action games. If the controls get too hectic, my fingers can't keep up. Are you the same person who soloed Omega Bahamut in Grand Gate? Grand Gate relies more on tactics than reflexes. If you focus on not losing rather than winning, you can beat most monsters. You say such cool things without any hesitation. Then, is there something you want to try? Give me a moment to think. Saying that, Yui looked around nervously and then set her eyes on a claw crane game. At first, it seemed like she was just casually looking, but it was then she noticed the stuffed toys as prizes and her eyes widened. She tugged at Yuma's sleeve excitedly. Yuma, look. What? It was your commonplace claw crane game. However, among the many stuffed animals were stuffed animals of their favorite manga characters Moshitsu, all piled up. Come to think of it, I remember seeing an article about them being made into merchandise. Do you want one? Yes. Yui's eyes sparkled as she nodded enthusiastically. Smiling at her childlike excitement, the two of them walked over to the claw crane game. Yui was glued against the acrylic panel, her gaze fixed on her favorite character from Moshitsu. Fi, a silver-haired lily heroine. Her expression seemed to say, cute and I want it. All right, should I give it a try? Yuma said this, and Yui turned around, looking surprised. Yuma, can you really get it? I'm not sure, and I apologize if I'm getting your hopes up, but I don't have much experience with these games. However, since we're here, why not give it a shot? Yes. Without delay, they checked the instructions. Then, they threw in a coin and began playing the game. In accompaniment of the lively music, they operated the crane. It would be cool if we could get it in one shot, they encouraged themselves, sharpening their focus. However, the world wasn't so kind. The crane, aiming for the plushie's body, missed the mark, lightly brushing against its leg before the game came to an end. Well, it's not that easy after all. Hee. Can I try next time? Of course, go ahead. This time, Yui took her turn. Yui was renowned for her exceptional skills in Grand Gate, but in her first attempt at the claw crane game, she didn't fare much better, barely lifting Fi's upper body before the game ended. However, their failures only fueled their determination. I'll go change some bills for coins. Sure. I'll look up strategies online. Both of them were hardcore gamers, and when they failed, it only fueled their determination further. They knew they couldn't leave without a win, so they got serious about strategizing. Yuma, what do you think about trying to aim for that string sticking out of the head? Even aiming for that small string might be tricky. Let's stick to a more beginner-friendly approach like this. They pressed their faces against each other, peering at their smartphones for strategies. Then, they walked around the claw crane game restlessly, checking the positional relationship and calling out to each other with phrases like all right, as they guided the crane. They failed several times, but even failing was fun. and after several attempts, "Oh, looks good, doesn't it?" "Yes." "Keep it going, huh?" At last, Yuma managed to lower the crane exactly where he wanted. The claw firmly grabbed the fee plushie, and entirely by chance, the claw also caught onto the string of the main character, Mao, from Moshitsu, which was below. The two of them cheered with excitement as they saw the crane lifting both plushies at once. And so, with Fee and Mao in her hands, Yui was overjoyed. She held both plushies close, burying her happy face in them. Hee hee. It's amazing that we pulled both of them at the same time. Well, it was purely by chance. But, you know, it feels nice somehow. Like these two meeting by chance. It feels like it was fated. I wonder when they'll get together in Moshitsu. I mean, it's pretty unlikely. Lilai characters rarely win the heroine race, you know? But Fee-chan is obviously the author's favorite, and they've set up plenty of flags, so I think there's a possibility. I still think it's tough. Their relationship is more like siblings or something, isn't it? I get that, but I like it when that kind of sibling-like love evolves into romance. It's just, I can really relate to. She trailed off, realizing what she was about to say, and blushed, her voice trailing off. Yuma also sensed the reason behind her embarrassment but pretended not to notice. And then, summoning his courage, he took a step forward. I like that kind of thing too. When Yuma said that, Yui's already reddened face turned even redder, now flushing up to her ears. She buried her face in the plushies with a shy expression, occasionally stealing glances at Yuma. "Hey, Yuma." "Yeah?" "This. I want you to hold this, Yuma." With these words, Yui handed Yuma the plushie of Fee. "This one?" Fee was supposed to be Yui's favorite character in Moshitsu. Yuma tilted his head in confusion as he received it. "Yes." "While Fee-chan is my absolute favorite character, today, I want you to have this one." Yui said this while hugging the Mao plushie tightly. "Why is that?" "Because it kind of resembles you." Yuma felt his heart racing once again. It was a very straightforward way of expressing her feelings. After saying this, Yui blushed even more and buried her face halfway into the Mao plushie, clearly feeling embarrassed. On one hand, he thought she didn't have to force herself if she felt so embarrassed. But on the other hand, he understood the desire to do it even though it was embarrassing. Anyone would be happy if the person they liked accepted their feelings. Yuma, then feeling flustered, accepted Fee. Yui had dressed up as Fee when she first visited Nen's store, and sure enough, she bore a striking resemblance to the character. To be handed Fee in this way, it was as though he had received Yui's feelings. It was all becoming too much. "I like you," he muttered in a tiny voice, almost inaudible to Yui. "Huh? Yuma, did you say something?" "No, it's nothing." He couldn't help but wonder what he was doing himself, but he felt like he had to let off some steam, or else his feelings might overflow. Naturally, this place lacked the atmosphere for him to convey those words properly. Secretly, he took a deep breath. His heart was pounding furiously. That moment was soon approaching. After playing around for a while, it was getting late, so as usual, Yuma offered to walk Yui home. "It's finally here." Yuma took what might have been another deep breath. He felt like he was breathing a bit shallowly due to being overly nervous. Perhaps his nervousness had also transmitted to Yui, as she seemed somewhat awkward in her steps. There was no conversation, but their linked hands remained unbroken as they walked to Yui's house at a slower pace than usual. Along the way, he had thought several times, wouldn't it be okay to postpone this further? He believed it was mutual, but if it turned out to be a misunderstanding, he wouldn't recover for a while. Furthermore, it was just plain embarrassing, and he was a little scared of disrupting the comfortable current state of their relationship. But more than anything else, he wanted to convey these feelings. Yui was adorable and precious to him beyond measure. He wanted her to be his. He wanted to possess her. He wanted to cherish her forever and make her happy. His chest tightened. Unintentionally, he applied more pressure to their linked hands, and in response, Yui squeezed back tightly. Like that, they arrived in front of Yui's house. Normally, they would part ways here, waving goodbye and each going their separate ways. But today, Yui didn't move. She probably sensed the impending moment based on the atmosphere. waiting nervously for Yuma's words. Yui, I have something to say. At those carefully chosen words, Yui stiffened. Well, you might have already noticed, he began, taking one last deep breath. And just as he was about to say the words, I like you. Will you go out with me? That's when it happened. Wait. Yui raised her voice in desperation. Yuma was taken aback, wondering what was going on. But Yui herself seemed flustered, as if surprised by her own outburst. Nevertheless, Yui managed to search for her words desperately and looked at Yuma again. Yui? Well, you know, I also have something I want to tell Yuma. So, please, let me say it to you. Yuma swallowed hard. His heart, already pounding, felt like it might explode. Well, go ahead. Why yeah. Well, but there, Yui stopped herself. Still, she struggled to choose her words and stammered, and then, for now, let's continue being good friends. Oh, he felt like he was about to stumble, experiencing a strong sense of déjà vu, thinking, hasn't this happened before? He somehow regained his composure. So, is that what you wanted to say? No. Well, that's part of it, but, question mark. It still wasn't quite clear. Yui seemed to be searching for the right words as she spoke. Yuma, the school camping trip is coming up soon, right? Huh? Oh, yeah, it is. He thought about what she was getting at but nodded anyway. At the high school they both attended, they had just finished their midterm exams, so the school camping trip was approaching. It was a one-night, two-day trip, with camping and other activities on the first day and returning home on the second day. Yui grabbed onto Yuma's clothes tightly, her face turning beet red. With teary eyes, she looked up at Yuma. I'll say it on that day. I promise to prepare my heart by then and make sure to express my feelings properly. So, please wait until then! Exclamation mark. This was no different from saying, wait for me until the day I confess. Well, sorry for being selfish, but I really want to, from my own. So, until then, can we continue as we have been? Why yeah, sure, I understand. So then, see you. Why yeah, see you. And with that, Yuma walked home feeling a bit unsteady. Even after returning home, he couldn't focus on anything. He didn't even turn on the lights as he collapsed onto his bed in his room. Yuma buried his face in the pillow, his emotions a mix of itching embarrassment and an indescribable sensation. He couldn't sit still and started thumping his bed with his fists. He felt an urge to shout Yui's name for no apparent reason, but he refrained from doing so, as that would be going too far. He had intended to confess. Being put in a position where he had to wait like this was unexpected. However, it was clear that Yui's intention was something like, I want to confess from my own heart, so please wait for me. Even Yuma could understand that much. Yui, who until a little while ago had trouble talking properly due to social anxiety, had expressed her desire to confess and say that she liked him. Just knowing that she was thinking about him made him incredibly happy. Still, being left waiting like this felt like being brought to the brink of explosion and then suddenly stopped. In the end, Yuma couldn't sleep properly that night. On the other hand, Yui couldn't possibly stay calm after Yuma's near confession, and she was in a state of ecstasy on her bed after saying something like, I want to confess from my own heart, so please wait for me. I said it! Exclamation mark. I said it! Exclamation mark. Once she had gone that far, it was almost, or rather, 90% a confession. Yuma must have completely realized her feelings. Overwhelmed with embarrassment, she kept rolling around in bed with her face buried in the pillow. After a round of self-embarrassment, she had a solo reflection session, thinking, interrupting Yuma when he was about to confess, after he had gone through the trouble to do so, was probably a bad move. And maybe I should have just gone with the flow and confessed right there. Then, she returned to rolling around, her emotions in turmoil. Her mood had already gone haywire. What should I do? I can't stop grinning. She tried pinching her lips with her fingers, but if she relaxed even a bit, her mouth would start curling into a smile. Fortunately, her parents hadn't returned from work yet, but they were aware that she had gone on a date with Yuma. She needed to fix her mood before they got home, or it would be obvious that something had happened. Yui was also a teenage girl after all, and it was her first love, with a boy she adored and couldn't get enough of. She shared mutual love with that boy, and he had even attempted to confess. While she had delayed the confession itself, she was already winning the game. A promised victory confession! Exclamation mark. She murmured such thoughts in her mind, thrusting her fist into the air, then promptly felt embarrassed about her own actions once more. Her mood was completely out of control. Yui let out a sigh and lay back, remembering what had just happened. Yui, I have something to say. When he said that, she thought he was about to confess right then and there. The boy she loved had told her that he loved her back. He had made the effort to confess to her. He had expressed his desire to be her boyfriend. It made her incredibly happy, filled her with excitement, and brought her immense joy. But at the same time, it had revealed the true nature of the uneasiness she had felt before. She had always been on the receiving end from Yuma. Thanks to Yuma, her complexes had improved, and she had become better at socializing. She could go to school, make friends, and every day was filled with happiness. Her feelings were mutual with the one she loved, Yuma. Her current happiness is thanks to Yuma. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that he had changed her life. She was truly grateful from the bottom of her heart. That's why she had wanted to convey her feelings to him. It was different from merely showing gratitude for everything he had done. She wanted to give this first love to Yuma, the one who had made her happy. With the most important words and the overflowing feelings she had right now, she wanted to offer them to Yuma herself. She reassured herself of her feelings, then opened the calendar app on her smartphone. The school camping trip was marked on the calendar. After a moment of hesitation, Yui added a heart-shaped sticker to that date. On that day, she would convey her feelings. She would confess to Yuma. She would ask him to be her boyfriend. It was embarrassing, nerve-wracking, and a little bit scary. But at the same time, she was extremely excited and couldn't wait. Sitting back on her bed, she picked up the Mao plushie she had won in the crane game earlier today. Closing her eyes, she mentally overlaid the image of Yuma with the plushie. Just that made her feel overwhelmed, and Yui hugged the plushie tightly. Interlude mutual love. Now, it goes without saying that students basically have to go to school on Monday. Of course, Yui and Yuma were no exception. Even if it was embarrassing to see each other right now. What should I do? On a Monday morning, Yui was curled up on her bed in her school uniform. Her face was already burning, and as the time for Yuma to come to pick her up approached, her heartbeat seemed to quicken. To be honest, she just wanted to skip school today and stay locked in her room like this. She wanted to forget everything and just sleep. Because just a few days ago, she had that kind of conversation with Yuma. She felt so embarrassed that she couldn't imagine facing him properly. Thinking back to that conversation, she made a strange noise in her mind and buried her head in the pillow, when she heard the sound of the intercom ringing, causing her to jump up. Yui, Yuma-kun's here for you. Why yes. In response to her mother's voice, Yui gathered her courage and stood up. She turned around once more in front of the mirror to check her appearance. Then, with a flutter of steps, she descended the stairs. After what had happened, facing Yuma was embarrassing, but at the same time, it was a little exciting. She wondered what kind of reaction Yuma would have after what had occurred. She put on her shoes at the entrance, placed her hand on her chest one last time for a deep breath, and then gently opened the door, poking her head out. Good morning. Good morning, Yuma replied, and then immediately after, turned his face away, seemingly having hit his limit. However, this was the reaction Yui had hoped for. Her Yuma, whom she loved so very much, was conscious of her and embarrassed. Thinking of that, her heart flutters uncontrollably. With her heart still pounding, she awkwardly moved closer to Yuma. Yuma, as if trying to conceal his embarrassment, vigorously scratched his head and finally spoke up. So, shall we go? Why yes, let's go. With that, the two of them started walking side by side, just as you'd expect. Today, they were too embarrassed to hold hands. However, compared to before, Yui felt that the distance between their hearts had shrunk. There was no conversation. They walked to school in silence. However, even during that time, Yui didn't feel uncomfortable at all. Just having Yuma by her side made her happy, but at the same time, she felt that it wasn't enough. They already understood each other's feelings. Yuma liked her as a girl, and they both felt the same way. Thinking about that made her want Yuma even more desperately. Just holding hands wasn't enough anymore. She wanted to be tightly embraced just a bit more. Yes, for example, they could cuddle again, hug each other tightly all day, and be affectionate. They were almost like a couple, so they could even kiss each other or something like that. Yuck! Exclamation mark. It was then she became aware that she was having some intense thoughts, and she let out an inner scream again. Thinking about such things outside was definitely not appropriate. She had considered stepping back and cooling her head, but silently, Yuma joined hands with Yui. Then, with a bit more force than usual, he intertwined his fingers with hers. Exclamation mark. It felt like Yuma was also expressing that he liked her and couldn't bear it anymore. And Yui couldn't take it any longer either. Embarrassed but delighted, wanting to respond to those feelings, Yui gently leaned into Yuma's arm. She pressed her body tightly against his. Unable to put her feelings into words, she hoped that her racing heart would convey her emotions to Yuma. With trembling anticipation, she cautiously looked up at Yuma's face. Yuma's face was beet red, his mouth squirming as his gaze wandered aimlessly. No doubt right now, he must be feeling the same way. He seemed utterly smitten with her, his emotions overflowing beyond restraint. She could now understand the feelings of the so-called mischievous girls. After all, this was incredibly heartwarming. Thinking that Yuma was conscious of her and feeling flustered made her feel an overwhelming sense of happiness and excitement. With these feelings in their hearts, the two of them walked along the path to the station. Chapter 7 Yui and the Outdoors. Not long after their date, the day of their school trip arrived. Today, they had to come to school in their gym clothes, and Yuma was nibbling on toast with Nen while in his tracksuit. School uniforms are nice, but there's a different charm to an active high school boy in a jersey. It's a feast for the eyes. What are you saying to your little brother? Now, it's no big deal. Anyway, today's the day, right? Phew, you must have been so excited you couldn't sleep, right? Not really. You've got dark circles under your eyes, you know. Stop it. Nen, with a mischievous grin, looked at Yuma, who averted his gaze in a huff. Today was the day of the school trip, the day Yui would confess. Of course, there was no way he could sleep properly, and he had only slept for about 2 hours. Incidentally, Nen knew all the details. Originally, Yuma had intended to confess during their recent date, but Nen had caught wind of it. When she asked about the outcome and Yuma replied with, "I haven't confessed yet," she proceeded to tease him mercilessly, calling him a wimp and worthless. In the end, he couldn't help but spill the beans about the whole situation. He was feeling a slight regret about that. Yeah, take this with you. What's this? Lip balm. I can see that. Why are you giving me this? Well, you know, high school boys and girls becoming couples. They might exchange a kiss or two, right? Nen was grinning from ear to ear. Yuma once again regretted not keeping the confession a secret, no matter what. After that, he left home and, as usual, went to pick up Yui at her house. In all likelihood, approximately half a day from now, he and Yui would become a couple. Thinking about it made the familiar path he was walking on feel somewhat floaty, and his chest tightened. In an attempt to conceal his nervousness, he quickened his pace, and there was Yui in her tracksuit waiting in front of her house. "Good morning." "Good morning." They exchanged greetings, but it was still somewhat awkward. They were both entirely aware of the situation. Yuma scratched his head vigorously, his gaze wandering as he searched for a topic, and then he looked up at the sky. It's good that it's sunny today." "Why yes, the weather forecast said there was no need to worry about the rain." "I wouldn't want it to rain today. It's a special day." "Well, that's, about the confession, it would be a bummer if it started raining." "Huh? But I was actually talking about the school trip earlier." "Sorry." "No, it's okay. I'm happy that you're aware of it too. You've really changed, haven't you? Back when we first met, you couldn't even hold a decent conversation. It's thanks to you, you know. Besides, how should I put it, It's just that I love you so much, Yuma, that my feelings tend to get a bit wild. Feels like we've pretty much said everything to each other, but technically, we're still just friends, right? Why yes. I mean, I want to make a clear distinction in situations like this, and I also want to express my feelings properly. Well, even if we start dating, I don't think things will change all that much. Ah, really? In reality, we hold hands like this every day going to and from school, and we're together most of the time at school too. Upon hearing those words, Yui fidgeted with her mouth and then blushed deeply, looking up at Yuma with upturned eyes. If we're a couple, then we can kiss, right? It was like she was indirectly saying that she wanted to kiss. At this point, Yuma felt like he was going to burst. That's foul. Sorry. No need to apologize. But Yuma turned beet red, and Yui was also on the verge of self-destructing, causing them both to fall into an awkward silence for a while. However, as they walked towards the train station, they naturally held hands without saying a word. It was embarrassing, but the fact that both of them were blushing and feeling shy made Yuma incredibly happy. Since their last date, it felt like the already close distance between them had become even closer. They both seemed to have gained confidence in the mutual feelings they shared, and it was as if the brakes had loosened. Even if we do something like this, I don't think she'll pull away or dislike it. If anything, she'll probably be happy. She'll feel excited. This sense of reassurance was unexpectedly strong, and Yuma had to be careful not to overdo it due to this newfound confidence. They continued to the train station and boarded the train. As usual, the train was crowded. Nonetheless, they attempted to find a good position within the flow of people, but today, their attempt failed. They were pushed by the surrounding passengers, and they ended up in the middle of the car. Moreover, to make matters worse, Yuma was able to reach the overhead handrails, but Yui couldn't grab onto any handrails or poles. Be careful, okay? Yeah, RTR. Whoa? The train suddenly jolted, causing Yui to almost lose her balance. In an instant, Yuma wrapped his arms around Yui, pulling her towards him. As a result, they ended up in a position where he was holding her close to his chest. Sorry. No. It's okay. Thank you. For the time being, he released his hold on Yui's body, but Yui didn't move away. Rather, she leaned slightly against Yuma, with her ear resting lightly against his chest. Yuma, your heart is pounding. He was always nervous when he was together with Yui, but today, due to her being more thinly dressed than usual, it seemed like the sound of his heartbeat was transferring to her. That's because I'm really embarrassed. I'm happy, to know that your heart is pounding. Besides, right now, I'm nervous too. Is that so? Yuma pretended to look at the advertisements hanging in the train while averting his gaze from Yui. He let out a small breath, trying not to get caught. What is this cute creature? Seriously? He couldn't help but find Yui, who blushed all the way to her ears while saying such things, incredibly cute. It was challenging to resist the urge to hug her tightly. From there on, there was no conversation between them. They were swayed by the train, with Yui listening to the pounding of Yuma's heart. To be honest, he was incredibly embarrassed, but he didn't feel bad because he believed that Yui was happy with his nervousness. They went to the outdoor school by bus. Several buses and students from the same grade as Yuma and the others had already gathered on the wide road near the school. Incidentally, the seats were first come, first served and free to choose. Yuma had worried about whether or not he could sit next to Yui, but it turned out they could sit together without any issues. As a matter of fact, a few girls including Asuka had already secured seats for them, shouting, "Suizaki-kun, Yui-chan, here," thus allowing them to sit side by side, with Yui on the seat next to the window and Yuma by the aisle, while the girls watched them with amused smiles. Sometimes, in manga and such, you'd see girls cheering each other on in matters of love, and it seemed like that kind of atmosphere. However, there was a subtle misplaced kindness in this situation. When they receive such expectant glances, it becomes quite challenging for them to engage in conversation. Even as the bus began to move, they couldn't help but be conscious of the people around them, leading to a period of silence. That's when Yui took out her smartphone and sent a quick glance in his direction. Yuma, understanding her intention, did the same and took out his smartphone. In short, they were planning to communicate via text. From an outsider's perspective, it might appear as if they were seated side by side with the potential for closeness, yet both of them have started tinkering with their smartphones. They sense a subtle disapproving gaze but choose to ignore it. Is this your first time experiencing something like this, like a school trip in the woods? Yuma sent the message, and Yui swiftly replied with flick input. Yeah, it is. Actually, I've always admired the idea of going on school trips like this with everyone, like in anime. I see. Well, let's make sure to have fun then. Yes. Yui seemed genuinely excited, and her face lit up with a smile. Seeing her expression, Yuma hesitated for a moment before typing out his message. I don't mean to sound preachy, but maybe for now, we should focus on the school trip itself. We're here, so let's make some great memories in that direction. Okay, got it. All right then. Now, I know it's a sudden change of topic, but would you like some candy? The strawberry milk-flavored ones. Ah, I want one. Yuma, do you also like the strawberry milk-flavored one? Yeah, they're delicious. Yes, I like them too. Yui's face beamed with happiness. Even such a small agreement made Yui smile so brightly. This made Yuma realize that she liked him a lot. Perhaps I'm the one who can't help but be conscious about it. With that thought in mind, as he tried to take out a bag of candy from his bag. Ah, a stick-shaped object rolled out of his bag. Yuma, you dropped something? Is that lip balm? No, that's... my Oni-chan told me to bring it just in case! Exclamation mark. Nen-san? In case of what? He realized immediately that mentioning Nen's name was the worst thing he could do. He should have just said something like, my lips have been dry lately, but he couldn't help but make excuses. Yui looked puzzled for a moment, but then she blushed when she realized the meaning. Oni-chan, you goddamn idiot. Muttering complaints about Nen in his mind, he accepted the lip balm and put it in his bag. Yui blushed intensely and fidgeted while resuming her smartphone activities once again. As he glanced sideways, he noticed her typing and erasing text repeatedly for a while. Once she finished pounding in the characters, she hesitated, her finger hovering over the send button. After a good 30 seconds of contemplation, she finally pressed the send button as if to say, here goes. Shortly thereafter, a message arrived on Yuma's phone. Upon looking at the screen, Yuma-kun, do you also want to kiss a girl you like? Is she really going to follow up on that? Already struggling with his heightened awareness, Yuma felt like tearing his hair out at this unexpected follow-up. It seemed like it was Yuma's turn to be in turmoil now. Today, Yui was supposed to confess to him, but given Yui's personality, it probably meant something along the lines of, if you want to Yuma, you can kiss me too. Nevertheless, he found that to be a bit of a problem. However, Yuma felt reluctant to outright reject her, as he believed Yui was mustering the courage to say such things. I can't say I haven't thought of it, he replied after a few minutes of deliberation, opting for a safe response. Then, he shot a fleeting glance at Yui to see how she would react, but she was looking out the opposite side of the window, her expression hidden. He could sense a slight blush on the back of her neck between her hair, though. After a short wait, Yui responded. So even boys have those kinds of feelings? Well, yeah. However, it doesn't mean I'm eager to act on them. But you do have the desire to, right? I won't deny that. But there are certain steps to these things, you know? However, in the romance manga I've read, after confessing and becoming a couple, kissing right away was pretty common. Don't mix 2D and 3D together. With that, Yuma sent a stamp of an anime character saying stop, to abruptly end the conversation. Continuing this discussion any further seemed like it could lead to some risky territory. It seemed that Yui had also reached her limit, and from that point on, they didn't speak to each other for a while. Afterwards, the bus continued to sway for a bit until it stopped at a service area for a break. The flush on their faces from the chat earlier hadn't completely subsided, but they had recovered enough to have a conversation. After using the restroom, they had some time before the bus departure, so they decided to explore the service area together. Should we buy some souvenirs for our parents? If you want to buy something, do it on the way back. It'll just be extra baggage now. Oh, right. It was a typical service area that could be found anywhere, but for Yui, who had been a shut-in until middle school, everything must have seemed unusual. Her eyes sparkled as she looked around. Yuma, I'm getting a bit hungry. Can I get something to eat? Sure, but try not to fill up too much. We'll have lunch soon. Okay. Yuma. They have cherry fruit samples. I didn't know they were growing cherries around here. Yuma. Watch this. Yui put a cherry in her mouth, including the stem. After chewing it for a while, she stuck her tongue out. On it were the stems of the cherries, all neatly tied together. You're pretty skilled. Yes, I had a lot of free time when I was in the hospital as a kid. Can you do it, Yuma? Let me give it a try. Yuma also tossed a cherry into his mouth, stem and all. After some chewing, he stuck out his tongue with the neatly tied cherry stems on it. Oh, nicely done. Well, even if I can do it, it's not like having an nimble tongue comes in handy in everyday life. Hee, that's true. As they chatted like that, they heard a familiar Kansai dialect. It's Suizaki-kun and Yui-chan. Turning around, they saw Nigo and Asuka, who had been doing something else. Huh? Asuka, did you buy something? Yes, look at this. Asuka excitedly said this and pulled a mysterious keychain with a dragon wrapped around a sword, a common souvenir from the gift shop, out of the plastic bag she was carrying. Nigo stood nearby with a vague expression. It's kinda cliché, isn't it? Is this also a part of making memories during the trip? I wonder why's everyone reacting so negatively. This keychain looks pretty cool. Asuka, let me confirm something. Are you planning to attach it to your bag or something? That keychain, huh? No, I won't. Wait, why did I even buy this keychain? You should have realized that before you bought it. Yuma and the others chuckled at Nigo and Asuka's exchange, and then Asuka's attention shifted to the cherry fruit samples, a tasting corner. I love tasting corners. Have you guys tried it already? Was it good? Yeah, it was pretty good. It was delicious. Then, Nigo-kun, let's eat together. Here, say R. Responding to Asuka's cheerful excitement, Nigo reluctantly played along. By the way, Nigo-kun, can you tie cherry stems with your tongue? Huh? I've never tried it. Why do you ask? Well, I heard from a friend that people who can tie cherry stems with their tongue are good kissers. Why are Yui-chan and Suizaki-kun blushing? No. It's nothing. Both of them felt embarrassed and quickly moved away from the topic. We should go back. Why yes, that sounds like a good idea. Feeling a bit awkward just walking around together, they returned to the bus a little earlier than planned. There was still some time before departure, and the bus was sparsely populated. Yuma took his seat and started fiddling with his smartphone to calm his nerves. However, Yui seemed to drop a bomb on him, as if to add to his discomfort. Hey, Yuma, what's up? Can I ask you something weird? Sure. Yuma, do you also, want to kiss? Various emotions welled up, but Yuma managed to endure them somehow. Well, I'm not against it at least. But, there's no need to rush into something like that, right? Alright? At that point, their conversation came to a halt. Even as the bus started moving, Yui, who was sitting by the window, continued to look outside without turning toward Yuma, but it was clear that she was feeling embarrassed. If you're embarrassed, then don't say something like that. I'm in a tough spot too. Yuma was, after all, a young man at that age. He did want to do those kinds of things, and in fact, there had been a close call when Yui had gotten a bit tipsy. However, at the same time, he genuinely wanted to cherish Yui. If Yui was saying those things to make him happy, he honestly appreciated it, but he still felt that kissing under those circumstances might not be quite right. Such things should happen when both of their feelings are truly in sync. And, right then, he realized something important. Yui had asked earlier if Yuma wanted to kiss too, confirming that Yui was still looking outside. Yuma discreetly took out his smartphone and reread their chat exchange. Yuma-kun, do you also want to kiss a girl you like? I can't say I haven't thought of it. So even boys have those kinds of feelings? Well, yeah. However, It doesn't mean I'm eager to act on them. But you do have the desire to, right? I won't deny that. But there are certain steps to these things, you know. However, in the romance manga I've read, after confessing and becoming a couple, kissing right away was pretty common. Don't mix 2D and 3D together. At first, Yuma had thought that Yui was saying something like, if you want to, Yuma, we can kiss, but now he realized that it was different. It was more like, I want to kiss, but I wonder how Yuma feels? A probing sort of question. In other words, Yui had been expressing her desire to kiss him all along. Once he realized this, he was completely overwhelmed. Interlude: a girl's feelings. On the other hand, Yui deeply regretted the question she had asked earlier. Why did I ask such a thing today? Thinking that she could become Yuma's girlfriend and that Yuma might also have feelings for her. Her love overflowed. It was as if she was running wild, unable to fully control herself. Lately, she's been reading a lot of romance manga and light novels for image training, and quite a few of them have scenes where they kiss right after confessing. Today, she's going to confess to Yuma. That's to say, it's possible that it could turn out like those developments in manga and fiction. She understood it was fiction in her head, but it was as if she'd been completely influenced by it. A mix of embarrassment, anxiety like, what should I do if he pulls away? And girlish feelings have made it impossible for her to look at Yuma properly again. What should I do? My heart keeps pounding. It won't go away. Yui was, after all, a teenage girl. She has dreams of kissing the boy she likes, but embarrassing things are embarrassing. And she doesn't want to be seen as forward or improper. Even so, she still wants to kiss him. And she wants him to notice that. However, at the same time, she is also embarrassed and doesn't want him to realize. Her girlish heart is all in a whirl. Even to herself, she thought it to be a bother. As she was thinking so, the bus entered a tunnel. Yuma was staring into the void, his face turned away from Yui. She slowly turned to look at him. Yuma's face had turned red, not just at his ears but down to his neck. Maybe he had realized that she wanted to kiss him, thinking that made her feel embarrassed. But when she believed that he was aware of her feelings, she felt her cheeks involuntarily relax. She felt sorry for causing him trouble, but she couldn't help but be happy when the person she liked reacted this way. Her heart skipped a beat, and she started to find Yuma somewhat cute. Slowly and carefully, she placed her hand on top of Yuma's hand, which was resting by his side. She felt Yuma's body tense up slightly, but ultimately, he accepted it. They softly touched each other, lightly intertwining their fingers. Yui let out a sigh of relief and shifted her gaze back to the scenery outside the window. As they held hands like this, she couldn't help but feel excited yet strangely comforted. Being beside Yuma felt like her rightful place. With that, her oddly heightened emotions settled down. She felt that as long as they were together, they would be okay, no matter what. They continued to be rocked by the bus until they reached their destination. After getting off the bus, they both stretched lightly. The sensation of their muscles, which had been stiff from sitting for so long, gradually relaxed. It was an enjoyable feeling. There wasn't a single cloud in the sky, and the perfectly clear blue stretched out before them. Where Yui and the others were currently was a parking lot nestled in the mountains. Looking around, no matter where she looked, nature surrounded them. And for Yui, who lived in the city, that alone felt refreshing. Taking a deep breath, she could smell the scent of forests in the air. It felt like she had stepped into a different world, though that may be an overstatement. But the new experience made her feel slightly lightheaded. All the students moved to a nearby campsite and were divided into teams to make curry for lunch. Yui's team consisted of herself, Yuma, Asuka, and Nigo, familiar faces she had known for a while. After some discussion on the spot, it was decided that Yuma and Nigo would cook the rice. As for the curry, it was left up to both Yui and Asuka. When it came to cooking, Yui tied her hair back as usual and put on her usual apron. However, of course, cooking outdoors like this was a first for her, and everything felt fresh and enjoyable. Yui-chan, is this size okay for the vegetables? Asuka asked, showing her the chopped vegetables. I think we had better make it a little smaller, since we don't have much time to simmer the vegetables. I think smaller pieces will make it tastier. I see. Even so, you really are skilled, Yui-chan. Yes, cooking is one of my strong points. But Meg-yu-chan, you seem pretty skilled too, right? My parents both work, so I often end up cooking for my little brother. Also lately, I've been doing some domestic training in preparation for marrying Nigo-kun. Asuka blushed, her expression faltering as she wriggled around in embarrassment. You really love Nigo-kun, don't you, Meg-yu-chan? Hey, Meg-yu-chan, can I ask you a question? Sensing Yui's impending question and noting her hushed tone, Asuka instinctively matched her lowered voice. What is it, Yui-chan? Well, what's it like being a couple? Like, during dates and stuff? Yui-chan, you're asking this sort of question? We can get pretty lovey-dovey, you know? I might get in trouble if I say too much. But when it's just the two of us on a date, Nigo-kun can be quite affectionate, you know. Is that so? And when we kissed for the first time the other day, he said he'd take responsibility! Exclamation mark. In an instant, Yui's face turned bright red. She glanced around nervously, lowering her voice even further. Meg-yu-chan? So, like, you kissed Nigo-kun? Yeah, it's just between us, okay? It happened when we had a hand-holding date as a reward for our midterm exams. We got into this really nice atmosphere, and then Kaya. Her heart was pounding. Well, Asuka and Nigo had been dating since middle school, and they were already high school students. So it was actually kind of late, but still, the fact that her friend Asuka and Nigo had kissed somehow made her feel, well, unsettled. So, Meg-yu-chan, how was it? In response to Yui's question, Asuka grinned. Yui-chan, do you also have an interest in this? That's yes. I see. I understand. Then, about my thoughts when kissing Nigo-kun for the first time, Asuka, who had been talking with an affectionate expression, suddenly blushed as she recalled that moment. It was, like, really intense. My head felt all fuzzy, but my heart raced, and I felt incredibly happy. Was it that amazing? Yeah, it exceeded my expectations. And then, just listening to her was making Yui's heart race. Listening to Asuka's account of her date with Nigo and imagining it happening to her and Yuma with the intention of confessing today. Perhaps even today, she and Yuma might. Ouch. Hey Yui-chan, are you okay? She had accidentally cut her finger with a knife. The wound was small, but blood began to seep out slowly, making her think, oops, I messed up. And then, Yui, are you okay? Yuma, who had noticed the commotion, rushed over. Yeah, I'm okay. Just cut my finger a bit. Yui said this, showing the injured finger. Yuma had a mixed expression of relief, knowing the injury was small, and concern as he looked at the slightly painful wound. Anyway, let's take care of this. Even if it's small, it could get infected with some nasty bacteria. Okay. With that, Yuma took Yui's hand. They reported to the supervising teacher, received some antiseptic solution, cleaned the injured area with water, and applied a band-aid to her finger. Yuma took care of everything. Yuma, aren't you being too overprotective? Is that a problem? No, I'm happy. Thanks. Come to think of it, something like this had happened before. Yui suddenly remembered. It was shortly after she had met Yuma. She had tried to go to his house alone and failed, ending up with a scraped knee. That was when Yuma had tended to her injury. Is something the matter? Yeah, I just remembered that Yuma had treated me like this before. Oh, yeah, I remember that. I'm sorry about that time. I said some harsh things. You're still bringing that up? Yuma said with a wry smile. But well, I think it worked out for the best in the end. Do you think so? Up to that time, we both had some reservations, didn't we? That incident helped me make up my mind about a lot of things. Honestly, I was so embarrassed to take you to my sister's shop. The first time they went to Nen's shop, Nen had welcomed them dressed in armor. Yuma at that time had covered his face with both hands in an awkward manner. Thinking back on it, Yui couldn't help but smile. But it was fun, right? It was my first time trying cosplay, but Nen-san kindly guided us through it. Don't say that in front of my sister, okay? She might drag you into the comrade-discovered vortex. But I'd like to do it again if it's with you. Nen-san's shop also rents out costumes, right? Ah, yeah. Then, how about next time? On a day when your parents aren't around, I'll dress up as a maid and serve you at home. You like that, right? Maids. That's. Yeah, I like that. But, haven't I told you multiple times that? Perhaps he was imagining that scenario. But Yuma averted his gaze, looking embarrassed. Yui could somewhat understand Nen's feelings when she teased Yuma. Yuma, blushing like this, was incredibly cute. You're really something else, aren't you? Hee. Well, yeah, I think so. Is that a problem? No, I actually like the current you more, Yui. What's wrong? Yuma, you say I'm defenseless, but I think the same goes for you now. Huh? Sorry. A slightly awkward atmosphere began to fill the air. However, this time, Yui took one step further. She gently tugged at Yuma's clothing, and with a whisper to his puzzled face, she spoke. But, I was happy when you said you like the current me. As soon as she said that, Yuma's face turned bright red. Yui herself blushed too but couldn't hide her joy. The old her would never have thought of saying something like this. But now, even though she felt embarrassed, she was more delighted that Yuma responded to her. Thinking that Yuma was also feeling excited made her heart race. She loved him so much, and every time he showed different expressions, her heart skipped a beat. Time continued to pass quickly, filled with joy. Although the curry got a bit overcooked due to her momentary absence, it added to the overall fun. Afterward, they were guided through the mountains, and despite not being particularly fond of physical activity, Yui found the mountains surprisingly cool and comfortable to walk through. The memorable moment was when Asuka had secretly tried to take home some mushrooms, only to discover they were poisonous. Nigo, unusually upset, had endlessly lectured about the horrific symptoms of mushroom poisoning, leaving Asuka on the verge of tears. They then moved to their accommodation and all the classmates took a bath together. Even changing clothes in physical education class was still embarrassing for Yui, so being in the bath was beyond awkward. And because everyone was unabashedly curious about her relationship with Yuma, the embarrassment was intensified. To make matters worse, they accidentally mentioned that they had stayed overnight at each other's houses, making it even more challenging to control the situation. Fun moments that would have been unimaginable for her just a little while ago. Happy days that she could savor because she had met Yuma, and now, they were about to create memories that they would surely never forget. The final event of the day, a test of courage. Yui had decided that she would confess to Yuma there. Chapter 8 Yui and Yuma. Following a somewhat long bath, Yuma made his way towards the square. After this, they would be having their final event of the day, the test of courage. It was a simple game where pairs of two would progress through a course and return once they reached the goal. Yuma gently placed a hand on his chest. His heart hasn't stopped beating since a while ago. Of course, this wasn't because he was afraid of the test of courage. It was because he had an inkling that Yui would confess to him afterwards. This was the only time during the school trip when they could be alone together. Probably before long, Yui would confess to him, and they would become a couple. Thinking about it made him feel uneasy. How should I wait in a situation like this? While pondering such things, he went to the square, which was the starting point, and already many other students had gathered there. Yui was among them, still talking to Asuka and not noticing him. Without knowing why, he found it difficult to call out to her, so he approached from behind while observing her actions. Megyu-chan, are you okay? You look kind of pale. I'm really bad with scary stuff. Yui-chan, aren't you scared of this kind of thing? Well, I'm totally fine. I'm used to it. That's surprising. I thought you were scared of these. Wait, did you just say you're used to it? Oh, yeah. Well, when I was little, my body was really weak and I had to stay in the hospital a lot. Sorry. I should stop talking about this. Wouldn't want to attract anything to us. No, Yui-chan, don't try to scare me like that. Nigo-kun. Seeing Asuka like that, Yui chuckled. In moments like this, he couldn't help but feel a strange sensation. Yui, who couldn't even go out properly when they first met due to social anxiety, was now happily chatting with friends like this, and it filled him with emotion. And then, Yui noticed him. She blushed upon seeing him, but with a happy expression. Her cheeks relaxing, she made his way towards him. Don't you think you're pretty late, Yuma? Aha! I had somewhat of a long bath. Yuma, are you nervous? Well, sort of. He. What's with that response? It's nothing you have to worry about. Seeing Yui's blushing cheeks while at the same time her gentle smile, Yuma couldn't help but feel a certain indescribable emotion, and he averted his gaze. Just after waiting a while, it was Yui and Yuma's turn. Let's go. Yeah. The two started walking side by side. Even though it was called a test of courage, they were just walking along a well-maintained nighttime road for accident prevention. If anything, it felt more like a nighttime stroll. Hey, are you okay? Yeah, I'm okay. I'm just nervous. You saying that is cheating, you know. They exchanged light banter to ease the tension, but no matter how hard they tried, their conversation gradually came to a close. Suddenly, Yui looked up. Hey, Yuma, look. Huh? Upon hearing Yui's suggestion, he looked up at the night sky where a sky full of stars stretched out before them. It was a sight not seen in the city. Breathtakingly beautiful. It's beautiful. You'll fall if you keep looking up. Yeah, I'm angry. Whoa. Careful. Yui stumbled over a small step on the road, but Yuma quickly reached out and supported her. What did I say earlier about falling down? Hee. Sorry. But thanks. They exchanged laughter. From there, they continued walking hand in hand in silence. Yuma recalled everything that had happened up to this point. A friend he made through online gaming, as a matter of fact, turned out to be a girl with white hair and had communication problems, and he helped her overcome them. At first, it felt like having a cute little sister, but well, little by little, that transformed into romantic feelings for the opposite sex. He loved Yui. He found her irresistibly adorable and wanted to be together with her the whole time. He wanted to make her happy. Turning his gaze towards Yui, Yui returned it with a gentle yet embarrassed smile. Just the two of us, huh? He felt his heart race at those words. Should we go in a little further? Yeah, Yuma, you know, I'm as nervous now as I was on the day I first met you. Come to think of it, it's only been a little over 2 months since then. It feels like it happened years ago. Yeah, I feel the same. A lot has happened. Really? As she said that, Yui snuggled up to Yuma's arm. Aren't you getting a bit too close? Is that not okay? It's not about whether it's okay or not, but, your chest. Then there's no problem. The softness he felt against his arm was quite distracting, but even more than that, he could feel Yui's heart pounding through her clothes. The two of them continued to walk in silence for a while. In the dark street at night, they could only hear the chirping of insects and the sound of their footsteps on the ground. Once again, it was Yui who broke the silence. My feelings. Do you understand them? She asked in a whisper, but it was more like she was seeking reassurance. That's. Yeah, I see. Yui's reply was so soft that it couldn't be heard without straining one's ears. Like that, they reached their last stop. It was a small square with a view of the night skyline. Yui smoothly released her arm and came to a stop. Yuma too came to a stop and turned around. Yui remained silent, her eyes cast downward. Seeing this, Yuma patiently waited for her words. Hey, there's something I want to tell you, Yuma. Yeah. Yui didn't say anything. No. She was trying to say something, but her words wouldn't come out. Perhaps it was the overwhelming nervousness that left her voiceless. She was desperately trying to convey her feelings, but the words just wouldn't come. Slowly but steadily, tears welled up in Yui's eyes. Yuma felt the urge to take her hand and comfort her, but he waited for Yui's words. Right now, Yui was summoning up all her courage. She was trying her best to communicate her feelings to Yuma. He wanted to receive those feelings. That's what he thought, and after several tens of seconds, she finally managed to form a single word, a sentence. Like. Yuma had heard Yui say the word like many times over, but this time, those words were filled with an overwhelming depth of emotion. I like you. I like you so much. From now on, after this, in the future, I want to be with you forever. So please make me your girlfriend, Yuma. Hearing those words, overwhelmed with affection for Yui, he impulsively embraced her. I love you too, he whispered into her ear, responding to Yui's feelings. He felt Yui's body tremble slightly in his arms. He pulled back a little. Tears were flowing from Yui's eyes, streaming down her cheeks. "Are you okay?" I don't know. Happy. I'm just so incredibly happy that my first love came true that my tears can't stop flowing." Yuma hugged Yui tightly once more, stroking her head as if to comfort her. I know this might sound cheesy, but you can wipe your tears on my chest." Sniff. Yui made sounds that were a mix of crying and laughter, and Yuma chuckled softly as he buried his face in Yui's hair. Yui had given him her first and only love. They had become a couple. Thinking about it, Yuma couldn't help but adore Yui even more. He didn't want to let her go, and his embrace tightened. "Yuma, is it bothering you?" "No." "Well, can we do it even more?" Saying that, Yuma responded to Yui's feelings by hugging her tightly in return. "Yuma, I love you." "Yeah. I like you so much." "Forever. I want to be with you forever." "Yeah. From now on, let's always be together." Those words felt like a marriage proposal, but strangely, it didn't feel embarrassing. Rather, he wouldn't mind if it was taken this way. Yui's delicate body fit perfectly in his arms, and embracing each other like this felt so natural and comforting. "How long have we been together like this?" Yui separated her body from Yuma. The eyes of Yui, looking up at him, were moist and vacant, as if she had been overcome with happiness. Yuma. Calling out his name in a soft voice, she tugged at his clothes playfully. It was as if a little child was looking for a reward for their efforts, and Yuma immediately understood what Yui wanted. He felt nervous, and part of him wanted to escape, thinking it was too soon for something like this, but more than anything, he wanted to reciprocate the courage Yui had shown by confessing. He wanted to respond to Yui's feelings. And he wanted to get closer to Yui. He placed his hand on Yui's slender shoulder. Yui's gaze wandered for a moment, then she closed her eyes and timidly turned her face towards him. His heart pounded intensely at the sight of her vulnerable, closed eyes. His face grew warm, but summoning his courage, he leaned in closer to Yui. Gently, their lips met. Yui shivered slightly but accepted it. His lips were soft and warm. It lasted only a few seconds, just a simple kiss, but it was the happiest moment of their lives. When their lips parted, Yui gently opened her eyes. Blushing, she touched her own lips with her fingertip and let out a bashful smile. "We had our first kiss, didn't we?" "Yeah. Thank you." "Well, thank you too." I was really nervous, but it made me so happy." "Me too," Yuma responded awkwardly, feeling a mix of happiness and embarrassment. On the other hand, Yui still seemed a bit dreamy, her eyes slightly unfocused. She playfully tugged at Yuma's clothes once again. "Hey, Yuma, once more, is that okay?" "Begging like that is cheating, you know. Is that a no?" "There's no way that's a no." Once more, Yui looked up at Yuma and closed her eyes. Yuma also responded, leaning in to kiss her again. However, just at that moment, they heard Asuka's scream. Startled to the point of jumping, both of them reflexively separated from each other. Wondering what had happened, they looked, and Asuka came running down the mountain path. "Asuka, what's wrong?" Ghost. A ghost appeared. "While I was walking with Nago-kun, something soft brushed against my neck." "Nago? What?" I must have left him behind." After waiting for a while, Nago, panting heavily, caught up with them. Asuka, don't suddenly start running like that. It's dangerous." I felt something brush against my neck. "Don't worry, it was just a moth about the size of your palm." "Well, that's already pretty horrifying for me." Watching Asuka and Nago making a fuss like that, Yuma and Yui gradually became calm. They glanced at each other. Their eyes met. They had kissed just a moment ago, but it seemed like it was driven by the heat of the moment, or maybe their emotions were running high. Anyway, once they regained their composure, it was impossible to continue. They felt too embarrassed and ended up averting their gaze. "Should we go back?" "Why yeah, let's do that." Saying so, they followed Asuka and Nago back. It turned out to be quite a loose outcome. However, their hearts were already connected. Without thinking, they held hands. Intertwining their fingers, they squeezed each other's hands as if to reassure their feelings. Wrapped in a soft sense of happiness, the two of them went back. Hee hee. Hee hee hee. The next day, even on the bus ride back, Yui couldn't wipe the smile off her face. You've been grinning like crazy since earlier. I know, but I'm just so happy, it feels like a dream. He understood the feeling. Yuma had been trying to contain his own grin since yesterday, and seeing how thrilled Yui was to be his girlfriend was just too cute. It made him want to make her even happier. Raising his hand, he lightly stroked Yui's head. Yui's expression softened, and she became pliant, allowing him to do as he pleased. He could sense the envious glares from the girls around and the jealousy from the boys, but he had decided not to care about it, prioritizing Yui. He might regret it tomorrow, but for now, it didn't matter. But there's one thing that's a bit disappointing, don't you think? It's how we address each other. You know, in manga and stuff, when couples start dating, they change from calling each other by their last names to using their first names, right? I kind of admired that. Oh, yeah. We've always been calling each other by our first names. Yui's desire for that kind of change was endearing to him. And then, it seemed like Yui had come up with something, as she looked up at Yuma hesitantly. So, please take care of me from now on, okay? D darling. Sorry. T that didn't happen. Forget it. You're asking for the impossible. Honestly, it was more impactful than he had imagined. He didn't expect that being called darling in that sweet voice would have such an effect. His heart was pounding. Yui was so dear and cute to him that he felt like he was losing control. But, driven by a sense of male pride or maybe just not wanting to show too much affection to a girl, he made an effort to maintain a poker face. Well, let me say it again. Please take care of me from now on too. Why yes, thank you for everything. As he said that, Yui seemed to hesitate, her gaze wandering. What's wrong? Well. Yui shyly fidgeted and took out her smartphone. She swiftly typed a message and sent it. Ping, a message arrived on Yuma's phone. Let's continue from where we left off yesterday, sometime in the future, okay? It seemed that the embarrassment had reached its limit, as Yui blushed deeply and turned her face away. Really? You're just like that? On the other hand, Yuma, who was equally blushing, covered his face with his hands. It seemed like the relaxed expression around his mouth wouldn't recover anytime soon. I might be hopeless at this point. With both of them in that state, the bus carried them back to their everyday lives. Epilogue. Okay, Yukon, it's great that you're dating Yui-chan, but just because of that, it doesn't mean you can do anything, okay? I get it, okay? How many times do we have to go over this? During breakfast, Yuma was getting slightly annoyed by Nen, who kept repeating the same thing over and over again. Although he had received help from Nen in various ways and had decided to date Yui, he had shared the details of how it happened, except for the fact that they had kissed. And ever since then, he had been receiving the same warning repeatedly. Listen here, it's true that I started dating Yui, but that doesn't mean I have any weird intentions or anything like that. Have a little more trust in your little brother. If you can honestly say that you didn't think about such things even for a moment on the day you started dating, then I'll trust you. No, it's not like that. You clearly just avoided eye contact. Nen chuckled at Yuma's response. Well, it's really not a big deal, right? It's something normal for high school boys, I think. Besides, I can tell that you care a lot about Yui-chan. But, you know, Yui-chan already has that reserved personality, right? Even without that, she's head over heels for you. So, just don't go overboard, okay? That's why I won't do anything to make Yui cry. I want to treat her well. What's with that saintly expression? Well, I guess it's kind of boorish to keep going on about this. Yeah, I hope you'll be happy together for a long time. Yuma nibbled on his breakfast toast with a solemn expression. In reality, if Yuma were in Nen's position, he'd probably have the same worries and couldn't argue against them strongly. But of course, Yuma had no immediate plans to do anything drastic about Yui. Even though they had become a couple, Yui remained his best friend, almost like a sister. Well, as a high school boy, he couldn't deny that if they continued in this boyfriend-girlfriend relationship, eventually such things might happen. However, he had no intention of rushing things. He wanted to cherish Yui as much as he could and make her happy. However, if he were honest with himself, He couldn't help but want to kiss her again. He couldn't forget the sight of Yui's face turning bright red, her nervous trembling, and her closing eyes. The sensation of her soft lips lingered in his mind. Thinking back to that moment, he couldn't help but feel overwhelmed by his love for Yui and unable to sit still. "Yuma, it's nothing." After getting ready, he left the house. Even on the way to Yui's house, his heart was pounding the whole time. Is it okay to continue like we always have just because we're dating now? Restlessly, he double-checked his appearance. This morning, he had used hair styling products he wouldn't typically use. After all, it was his first ever relationship. He was feeling quite jittery, but it was also incredibly exciting. It was more exhilarating than facing an unknown formidable foe in a video game. Many times over. He couldn't wait to see Yui, and that made him walk a little faster. And before he knew it, he had arrived in front of Yui's house. He took a deep breath once more. With a hint of hesitation, he pressed the intercom button. Immediately after, Yui, who was probably waiting by the entrance, showed up right away. "Good morning." Morning." Yui greeted him like that as she nervously came out of the house, moving quickly to stand in front of Yuma. She seemed embarrassed and didn't look directly at Yuma. Her face turned even redder as she sent quick, furtive glances to check on his reaction. She had been cheerful and excited on the bus, but had she become shy now that things had calmed down a bit? Seeing her like this was adorable and endearing, and it was hard for Yuma to resist the urge to hug her. Then, Yui slowly took out her smartphone and began typing something. Ping. Yuma's smartphone made a notification sound. The content was, of course, a message from Yui. "Just to be sure, may I confirm something?" "Okay." "That thing at the school camp, it wasn't a dream, was it? It's definitely real. It wasn't just my misunderstanding, right?" "There's no way you could have misunderstood that." There was a short pause before the next message arrived. "So, we're already a couple, right?" "Yes." After sending that message, Yui's face turned red as if she were emitting steam. She squirmed with a mix of joy and embarrassment in her expression. What a cute creature she was. "By the way, why have we been chatting instead of talking in person? When I think of us as a couple, I get so embarrassed that I can't look at your face properly." Yuma glanced briefly at Yui, who was making an effort to look at him, but as soon as their eyes met, she quickly shrank behind her smartphone, as if hiding. Seriously, what a cute creature. Watching her like that, he was finding it increasingly difficult to restrain himself. "Yui, can I do something just for a moment, huh?" "Oh." He wrapped his arms around Yui, hugging her tightly. Her warmth and softness felt comforting. He loved her so much it felt like he might lose control. Yuma, my parents are at home, so it would be embarrassing if they saw us. So, please." Upon hearing her words, he released his hold on Yui. She seemed so embarrassed that her eyes were starting to well up with tears. "I'm sorry." No. It's just embarrassing, but I'm happy, so, that's." Yui looked up at him with upturned eyes and lightly tugged on Yuma's clothes. "Next time when we're alone again." "Okay?" "Yeah." Yuma blushed as deeply as Yui did upon hearing those words. He couldn't help but think, I just said that to my sister a moment ago. What am I doing? As he covered his face with one hand. So, shall we start heading to school? Why yeah, let's do that. They started walking with slightly awkward movements. His feet still didn't feel firmly planted on the ground. Even though it was the same old path, it felt like he was walking on air. Above all, the feeling that surged within him was hard to put into words, knowing that such a cute girl was his girlfriend, and she liked him as a romantic partner. Yui, too, seemed lost in thought or in some kind of daydream, her face flushed with a dreamy expression. Shall we hold hands? When he made the suggestion, Yui's shoulder twitched. If it's embarrassing, you don't have to force yourself. Yui shook her head vigorously. Then, she nodded vertically this time. Somehow, no matter what Yui did, she seemed incredibly cute and endearing. They gently held hands, intertwining their fingers, as a couple would. Yui's hand was indeed small and soft. Just holding each other like this made them both feel incredibly happy. Suddenly, he remembered their entrance ceremony. On that day, too, they had walked to school holding hands like this. It felt like it had happened a long time ago, as well as if it had just been yesterday, an odd sensation. Let's walk a bit more slowly. Yeah, let's take it slow. They spoke to each other like that. Yui squeezed Yuma's hand tightly as if saying, I want to be with you forever, and he responded by squeezing her hand just as tightly. And so, the two of them walked slowly along the path to the station. Afterward, for those of you who have been following me on Twitter, you may already know, but this work was in danger of being cancelled after the second volume. However, thanks to the support of many people, I was able to depict the conclusion of the two characters' love story like this. Thank you very much. This story will come to an end here for now. How was it up to this point? I would be delighted if this work, which I have truly loved, is loved by all of you and remains a cherished memory for a long time. To my former editor, Mr. Penny, thank you very much for everything. From here on, I hope to create wonderful works with my new editor, Mr. Sawa. Please look forward to it. To the illustrator, Maruma, thank you for the wonderful illustrations every time. It was enjoyable to think about which scenes to have you draw, and I was happy to gaze at the illustrations that were sent to me. I was also really delighted to receive your feedback. I hope we have the opportunity to work together again in the future. Lastly, I want to thank the fans who have supported and encouraged me throughout. Thank you very much once again. I would be happy if this third volume, which I was able to release with your support, lives up to your expectations. I don't know when or what my next work will be, but I will definitely return to this world, so your continued support is greatly appreciated. It's been about 2.5 years since Yui Kamishiro first came to mind. Well, truly, it has been wonderful days. End of Volume 3. Series completed.